Okay, here's our planning board agenda. I'm going to read adequate notice of this meeting as required by the Open Public Meetings Act of 1975 has been provided by a notice published in the Home News Tribune on December 28, 2019, and posted in the main lobby of the municipal complex on January 5th, 2020. Okay, this is a virtual meeting, but we have where the public can speak. Do they raise their hand? Is that how they get your notice?
Yes, through the app, they can raise their hand or on their phone, dial *9.
*9, okay. All right, I think at this point then, we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Hey, Lillian, I'm so glad you're here for roll call.
Okay, Ms. Ruggieri,
Present?
Mr. Pippola,
Here.
Mr. Correct?
I see him.
Don,
Yeah, President, I can't hear her.
Member Coyle,
Here.
Soltez. Here. Mr. Peasy? Is he on? Okay. Mr. Singh? JP, are you on? Okay. Mr. Danielle, he's not here. Mr. Reader? JJ, are you there?
We sent him another notice, another invite.
Attorney Rubin?
Here.
Mr. Bignell?
Here.
Mr. Carley?
Here. Here, I'm sorry.
We have 5 people.
You didn't get me.
Oh, I'm sorry. Mr. Sandowski?
Here.
Okay, are we on to resolutions?
Yeah, we have a quorum.
You have 6.
Okay, so we have a quorum. Resolutions P5218, Christina Daniels, Lafayette Avenue.
Madam Chair, to make a motion to approve the P5218.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Lillian?
Mr. Jerry?
Yes to approve?
Mr. Pippola?
Yes.
Mr. Correct?
Yes, to approve.
Councilmember Coyle?
Yes.
Mr. Soltez? Mr. Sandowski?
Yes.
Okay, this resolution is approved.
Okay, the next one is P5221, Markham Developers, 807 to 815 Wood Avenue.
Make a motion to approve the resolution?
Second.
Okay, Lillian?
Ms. Ruggieri?
Yes to approve?
Mr. Pippola?
Yes.
Mr. Correct?
Yes, to approve.
Councilmember Coyle?
Yes.
Mr. Soltez?
Yes.
Mr. Sandowski?
Yes.
Okay, we're ready for old business? Just checking with Lillian. Where's that for old business?
Yes, if, you ready, Hank?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Madam Chair, we're here tonight to give you a response to the need of redevelopment for Meadow Road Environmental Protection Agency. This is over at the Depot property owned by the federal government. It's block 394, lot 2. And I have Todd, who was on the Zoom, which he has control of the slides and whatever to make the presentation for you. But this is in response to your request to have us review the need of redevelopment for this property. So, Mr. Todd, if you will
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me all right?
Sure.
Yes.
Lily needs to be sworn in.
One
Um,
moment, wait,
He needs to be sworn in, Madam Chairwoman.
okay.
Ms. Bletcher, do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right, please state your name, spell it for the record.
Sure. My name is Todd Bletcher. Last name is spelled B as in boy, Letcher.
Madam Chair, before you start, you may want to swear me in too, because I may want to interject at times.
Oh, that's right.
Mr. Bicknell, do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you very much. Mr. Bletcher and Mr. Bicknell both work for the consulting planning firm that does work on behalf of the board on a regular basis. Unless someone feels the need, I don't see any reason for them to put their credentials on the record, and I think they can just begin.
I agree.
Okay, Mr. Todd, let's do it.
So yours, Mr. Bletcher.
Okay, so I'm going to take over your screens here.
All right, let's mark these as exhibits as you go one by one, okay? Let's do the whole study as A1.
That's fine.
And if
That
you're
would
just
be-
going to use exhibits from the study, then the whole thing is A1, and there's no reason to mark individual exhibits. If you have any extraneous exhibits, then we'll have to mark those separately.
So I do have the study report that is revised through July 21st, 2020. That's been on file. And in addition to that, the only other document we have is the slides, the PowerPoint presentation.
Is that just simply a replication of the study itself?
These PowerPoint provides summaries of the information that's in the study
Okay,
report.
then that'll be A2.
Okay.
And you'll have to submit that to Lillian for the record.
I will do that first thing tomorrow morning.
Great.
Lily?
Okay, ready to get started, everyone?
Yes, we are ready.
All right. So this redevelopment study is relative to the EPA, Environmental Protection Agency property on the south side of Woodbridge Avenue. If you recall, there was a resolution that was adopted by the council delineating the study area, and that study area resolution called the property Meadow Road Environmental Protection Agency Study Area. That is a bit of a misnomer, and I can explain to you why in just a few minutes, but for most of us familiar with the roads in South Edison, Meadow Road is the road in the south part of town near the intersection with Old Post Road and Woodbridge Avenue. It turns out that there is another Meadow Road that is an isolated paper street that is located in the back of the EPA property in the old Raritan Arsenal, also shown as Meadow Road. So I'll show you a map of that, but that's where the discrepancy comes from. This is not something that's located on Meadow Road down by the Edison Boat Basin or anything like that. So the study, I'm going to take you through the slides here. The scope of this study includes historical research that we did on the property. And by the way, the analysis is provided in a report revised July 21st, 2020. That report consists of 20 pages, and that's been on file with the administrative officer at least since the first of this month. The findings of that report are offered as the justification for the redevelopment designation. My testimony tonight just summarizes the findings of that report. So as we do on multiple studies, we did quite a bit of historical research on the property. There's a tremendous amount of archives of both the operations and the environmental issues that are present on the former Raritan Arsenal site. And Raritan Arsenal, by the way, at the height of its operation, it took up a wide swath of the entirety of the south portion of the township, 9,000 acres of land. 3,000 acres of land, and employed somewhere in excess of 9,500 employees at the height of its operation. Truly a colossal operation. We also visited the site in August of 2020 and documented the conditions that were found there. The study area contains 2 lots, and it includes 55.5 total acres of land. This particular parcel is technically owned by the United States of America, and that is courtesy of the Environmental Protection Agency, which maintains control over the site, but technically the site is owned by and operated by the Government Services Administration, which is the agency that controls federal property. You can't get to the site. The only way through to it is through several EPA gates that are gated and closed, and there are armed guards and barriers and all sorts of things to prevent anyone from accessing the EPA and federal facility at the site. So no access. But we do know that the property does contain 2 former arsenal buildings. They were used for wartime vehicle and equipment processing. And we also know that they were used for landfill and material disposal issues. This is the property. It's outlined in red. It's the shape of a big C or a Pac-Man. You can see the built out area of Raritan Center to the right, to the east. Fieldcrest Avenue is the major road there. On the south side of the property, there's a rail right-of-way, and beyond that, the buildings that front on Northfield Ave in Raritan Center. You can see on the left side of the site, there is a road right-of-way. It's outlined in yellow. That's the Old Meadow Road. If you're traveling out of Metuchen, going south on South Main Street, you're traveling towards, imagine yourself traveling towards Woodbridge Avenue. You come up to the light with Woodbridge Avenue and South Main. The old Victorian Manor would be on your right. The Owens and Illinois building would be in front of you. The Old Meadow Road right-of-way went right through there. That would have been a 4-way intersection. That road was abandoned and vacated in the 60s when the Owens and Illinois buildings were built. So it essentially left that road an isolated sort of a stub road, paper street, not constructed and inaccessible from almost anywhere in the township. Just zooming in, this is a zoom in of the property. On the south portion of the property, it's heavily wooded. There are some areas that have been cleared in the past, and there's some environmental details I can give you about what we know there. On the northern portion of the lot, or the study area rather, there are 2 very large former warehouse buildings. The buildings, the roofs and the walls were demolished in the early 2000s. What you're looking at is an aerial view of the concrete floor slabs that remain. You're looking sort of straight down onto that concrete floor. The slabs are in excess of 10 inches thick of concrete. You can just imagine the weight that would be necessary to hold the military vehicles and equipment. That's how thickly they built the floors. We understand that the buildings were used for the maintenance of vehicles, so very obviously sited there next to the rail line so that vehicles and equipment could be moved on and off of the rail cars and maintained in those massive vehicle maintenance buildings, and then equipment vehicles put back onto the rail cars and shipped out wherever they're going. For the board members that have seen this before, we evaluated the site based on the redevelopment criteria that's provided in the statute. We only need to qualify under 1 criteria, A through G, but we believe the site can qualify under multiple criteria. So I'd like to tell you which ones they are and why they would qualify. The report finds that the site qualifies under criteria A, B, C, and D. And I can speak very briefly on A, B, and C right now. And then I'd like to show you some images of the site, and then we can move on to D, which I think is a very strong argument. Criteria A speaks to buildings or improvements that are dilapidated or obsolete. And I think that's very obvious just from the pictures that are available in the report, that the buildings are dilapidated and obsolete. Criteria B speaks to discontinuation of former industrial buildings that are in such a poor state of disrepair that they can't contain any tenants. And I think that's obvious with the buildings being in such poor condition, demolished, And I think that's an obvious criteria that can qualify. C, at least the southern portion of the site, speaks to vacant land that's remained so for a specific period, and properties that have issues with both remoteness and lack of means of access. And that's the reason why I wanted to just provide you some information on the road accesses on the site and the old Meadow Road that's been vacated and removed. So effectively no way to get to this property but for going through the EPA security gates. And obviously that is not something the EPA in terms of security would be able to facilitate. So we have some access issues. We've got some dilapidation and obsolescence issues. We've got remoteness, and we've got a former industrial facility that's in quite a bad state of disrepair. Access to the site is through these several EPA gates, and there are actually 3 of them, 3 separate layers or checkpoints to have to go through to actually get to this property. But for obvious reasons, private sector wouldn't be able to develop a warehouse or other industrial type use, which I would presume, which is probably something we might see here in the future. Can't go through the EPA property to access that. So we'd have to figure out some other way to get some access. Moving on, this is what the site looks like. It is a sea of concrete. Like I said, 8 inches thick. Besides the building demolition, there's really nothing that's occurred here in the past 60 years. And walls are gone, but the concrete floors and parts of the roads, although crumbling, are still there. What you do see around the site is, and this is a site that hasn't been touched in 60 years, that is that we're starting to reforest. All of the natural areas are sort of growing, and the site is being reforested. Just some images from the report. Some of the building rubble is still on the property in the upper left-hand corner. Lower left-hand corner, you see the rail right-of-way going through the center portion of the property. Upper right, you see the old Raritan Arsenal Army Base road to nowhere that goes through the center portion of the property. And again, the lower right, just the sea of asphalt that's down there. Criteria D relates to a deleterious land use that's detrimental to health and safety. And the report argues that that is present on this site, particularly because of environmental contamination. There are several known areas of contamination on the site, and the report suspects that there are probably several unknown areas of contamination. It is unique in that we have 60 years of environmental studies, records, and remediation for the former Raritan Arsenal. So there is really a trove of information that's maintained by the Army Corps of Engineers that speaks to all sorts of contamination issues that have been found on the site and all sorts of remediation activities that have occurred over the years. So this, what you're looking at now, is the EPA's sort of summary map of environmental contamination. All of the different areas of contamination are shown, and I can just overlay. That's where the property is. You can see that where it says, you can see the dashed lines and the solid lines. That's areas of concern, and they're labeled 1 through, looks like 8. Those are areas of groundwater contamination that have been found on the site. You can see the monitoring wells, which are the blue and white circles. On the southern portion of the site, you've got source contamination areas. On the upper portion of the site, underneath the buildings, the pink rectangles, those are suspected contamination areas that haven't been fully explored, but at least preliminarily we know are out there. Most of the contamination on the site is waste material and ordnance explosives material that were buried on the site. Many Edison residents who have been in town for some time can recall every 10 years or so, whenever someone is excavating or digging out in the area of Middlesex County College or Thomas Edison State Park, sometimes we end up finding unexploded bombs and other ordnance materials where we thought they were not going to be. So that is part of the reason why we have the contamination of the site. And I just want to read from you very briefly. We have tremendous records that are available. And I just want, this is listed in the report, but I thought this sort of summed it up in the idea of what the extent of the contamination out there is that this is we have the testimony of a lieutenant, William Coffin, and this is from his 1955 report on the closing of the arsenal. And he writes in here that, and I'm quoting from him, quote, "One of my additional duties was being the witnessing officer of the destruction of obsolete ammunition. This was done by burning in a very large and deep open pit. I believe the widespread explosive burials began shortly after World War II, when just too much of everything was being shipped back into the arsenal. Someone was left with no procedure and had to make a quick decision for disposing of outdated and unstable explosives that could potentially ignite the whole place." So what we have is materials that were disposed of, certainly improperly, but that's caused quite a bit of contamination on the site. And the report opines that the contamination, the explosives, and the potential for a developer finding unknown contamination, explosives, materials out there have worked against redevelopment of the property, along with the access issues, and that in of itself is detrimental to public health, safety, and welfare. So in conclusion, the report finds that criteria A, B, C, and D are all satisfied in one way or another, and that the site meets the qualifications as an area in need of redevelopment. And that's all I have for you. I'm glad to answer any questions anyone might have.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Mr. Bignell.
I can answer most of the questions. Mr. Todd has to go to another meeting, so if you have any questions for him specifically, I would ask that you ask them now. And
Mr. Sandowski?
Yes, Mr. Bignell. So there's a potential for active ordnance still be out there, correct?
yeah, it could be buried. It was, put in there years, like 50, 60, 70 years ago when they were bringing the stuff home from World War II.
So once the property is redeveloped, they're going to have to go through this and check the area to make sure that it's safe.
The contractor will have to, be very careful in his.
That might be the last move he makes.
Well,
if he did
I'm sure they're gonna X-ray things and do things by the book, and
Right.
he's gonna be very careful. Sure.
And I think Todd explained that the property is still owned by the federal government.
It's owned by the federal government, and I'm assuming that the concrete area will be where the building's gonna go. I'm sure there's no ordinance buried under the concrete area, but in the open space areas, they have to be very careful.
Is there any concrete plans for what they want to put
No,
here?
not yet. That's not part of this study. That would be part of the redevelopment plan.
Right.
If you guys agree that it's in need of redevelopment, the federal government then will sell it to a developer. And then that person will have to work with us to develop a plan for, warehousing or whatever.
And it's approximately 55 acres out there now?
Yeah, I believe it's
Yes.
55 acres, right, Todd? Yeah.
55 acres.
All right, thank you very much.
Okay, other questions?
Madam Chair, just a comment. Todd, that was a great report. I can't remember when I've seen one of these investigations where we ended up with 4 criteria being met. That's got to be a new record.
Thank you.
That's probably why the land's been sat vacant. Besides the federal government owning it, it sat vacant for all those years because nobody probably wanted to touch it. They gave away Kilmer, Camp Kilmer, all those places have been given away years and years ago where Rutgers is and stuff, but they're just getting rid of their surplus now, and he finally found a developer that'll probably work on this property.
Thank you,
Right.
Madam Chair.
Okay. Other questions or comments? Yes.
Just one more question, Hank, or Todd. Access to the site is through that Metuchen Road. So if this was sold, all of those gates and everything would be gone out of there.
They're going to have to create an access for this property.
Okay.
So I'm not sure if it's going to be through those gates because it's still part of the depot.
Right.
That'll still be in place. I had to laugh, but 35 years ago, I got sworn into the Marine Corps there. That's where I took my oath of office there at the depot.
So they're going to probably have to delineate that road to make sure that where that road's going, there's nothing underneath that road too,
Yeah,
right?
and you're still going to have all the opportunity to, review the site plans and do all that stuff, even after you do the redevelopment plan. So you have a lot of questions you get answered down the road.
But meanwhile, this is fallow property that the town can't use and can't get any taxes on and nothing, right?
Once the federal government sells it to a private developer, then it's going to be
No,
taxable
no, but right
property.
now, we're not getting
You ain't
anything.
getting a dime for it
Town's
now.
getting zero.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Councilman Coyle.
to the expert, can you walk me through again, coming down Amboy Avenue, where this is, coming down Woodbridge Avenue, where this is located? I know you mentioned crossing the railroad tracks, Victorian Manor is on your right. Can you
So,
walk me through some more
certainly.
detail?
So
One
the
que- one more
proper,
question. Could you
Sure.
also, can you also clarify in destination of where the Wawa is and the other project with the housing and where the college is? Can you just give me a better insight of where this property is?
Can I just interrupt, Mr. Bignell, were you going to answer or was Mr. Belcher?
Mr. Bletcher has to go to another meeting, so
I can handle this one briefly, and then I can pass it on to you, Mr. Bignell.
very good.
So the property is effectively, it's behind the EPA gate. So if you're on Woodbridge Avenue, right by the light, by the old Victorian Manor, there's the EPA gate with the security guards and the barriers. You'd have to basically go through that gate and drive straight back another quarter mile, essentially into the woods, to be on this property. On the other side, the back end or the south end of this property abuts the back end of property that's on Newfield and Fieldcrest in Raritan Center, but you'd have to go sort of all the way around to get to it from there.
Okay, so the EPA entrance is off of Woodbridge Avenue. Today, you can't get through there without, permission process. So that's the
That's
entry
correct.
to get in there.
It took 3 weeks for us to get access.
And what else? There's 4 sides or 3 sides to the property. What else abuts? Can you give me the sideline neighbors? Is the college the neighbor? Is it the rear street by the tennis courts and the baseball fields? I'm just trying to.
Sure. So if you went,
Mr. Bletcher, do you have an exhibit that would help if you could repost an exhibit?
let me see if I
aerial
can
of
go
some
back to
kind?
take over the screen. Sure.
That would, I think, and then describe what the aerial shows and what's around it. That would help everybody.
Let me go to this one. So Woodbridge Avenue is to the north, and
Can you
That's-
have a pointer? Can you?
I
okay.
do, and I'm pointing to it right now. So Woodbridge Avenue
Okay, good enough.
is the area up here. So you access to the site. So this is South Main Street coming down through Metuchen.
Understood.
I'm sorry, this is South Main Street right here. So the access to the site is literally through the EPA gate. You'd have to get security clearance, you go through the gate and you drive sort of back into the woods back there, driving south essentially towards the Raritan River. That's the eastern portion of the site. On the south side of the site, there's a rail right-of-way. And that right-of-way is between this property and all the other properties that front on Northfield in Raritan Center. So you can't get there from Northfield because there's a rail line that separates the back of all those buildings from this property. On the eastern side of the site, there's another Conrail right-of-way, and there's potential that there's a
I don't see your pointer. Could you?
Sure.
Keep
So
your
this is
pointer to what you're speaking to.
right. So there's a Conrail right-of-way that goes this way through the center of the site.
All right.
Okay. And there's other buildings here on Fieldcrest. This building's on Fieldcrest Ave. So is this one and this one here. So you'd access those buildings from Fieldcrest in Raritan Center, which is here. So you wouldn't be able, but for the Conrail right-of-way, you can get there through Conrail, but you can't really get there from Fieldcrest or from Newfield in Raritan Center.
You go to the other side. Who's the neighboring property on the other side?
This is still on the west is still the EPA property.
Okay.
So the EPA property is 178 acres, and this is just a chunk of you think of it as the southeast corner of the EPA property. Beyond the EPA is going to be Middlesex County College all the way over here.
Okay. So the baseball fields are pretty far away from this site.
Right, right. So if you're in the parking lot of Middlesex County College and you're looking toward the old Raritan Arsenal, you're still a good mile or half mile away from this little piece of
Thank you.
property.
Did you have additional
No,
questions for Mr.
thank you.
Bignell?
No, I'm fine. That, just clarification of location. Thank you.
Just one more for Hank or Todd. Are the rails still active that are by property, or can they?
The rail lines are still used on demand. I don't think there's a schedule. I think they, as they need them and they have trains full of
active at all?
material, they are active, yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Todd.
Madam Chair, one more question. What is the date of the letter from the Lieutenant Colonel?
It's from 1955, but I believe it's a recent recollection of his 1955 report that he issued, but it's on page 18 of the study.
Site being used from what time period to what time period?
Sorry, I didn't hear the first.
It was used in the First World
Could
War
you-
and the Second World War.
Could you give us the years when it was being used? The
As
site?
what? What?
The arsenal was used between 1917 and it was BRAC decommissioned sometime around 1960.
Okay, thank you.
Chair, so Mr.
I
Mr.
didn't-
Bignell would like to make a comment.
I'd like to excuse Mr. Has to make some-
Thank you all. Good night.
Are there any other questions for Mr. Bignell? Mr. Rubin,
Yes.
we have 3 members of the public physically here. They want to, one wants to make a question, wants to ask a question.
That's fine. Just have them come up and identify themselves by name and address, and they can ask Mr. Bignell a question.
My name is Mohan Patel.
Would you please spell your name for the record, please?
Yes, my name is Mohan Patel, M-O-H-I-N, Patel, P-A-T-E-L. The address is 200 Monroe Avenue, Edison, New Jersey. Question,
Madam Chair, just point of order to the secretary. I wasn't aware that we can have people come to the podium. I'm happy they can, but where was there notice that we can have people come to the podium? Because, I mean, was it, because I'm just trying to figure out, for those who want to come to this meeting, I mean, he was a drop-in, which is fine, and thank you for coming.
No.
But the point is
the reason why if I could add, the reason why I came in is because the Zoom is shut down. I don't see anyone else that's on there. There's no video from the public, nor is there a way for us to address any of the issues that we have. Stop what?
You're not sworn in. You're here just to ask a question. Please just ask your question.
No,
That's
swear
what
me
you're
in.
here for.
I actually want the testimony to be recorded, so.
There
it's
is
on
no
the record.
testimony right now. This is a hearing.
So let's have it on the
Please.
record then.
Excuse me, please.
Let's have it on the record.
Please, sir. If you're going to
Okay,
be
now-
rude, we're going to ask you to leave. I'm asking you to respect the
You're
board
responsible
and me.
for the public's responsible. You're responsible.
We're going to call the police and we're going to ask you to leave if you don't play by the rules. I'm
You know what?
asking you to play by the rules.
You cannot get away with interests of the public being diminished.
Mr. Soltez, could you please call the police?
What you're saying?
Sure. What would you like
Mr.
me to say?
Soltez, could you please call the police and have this man either removed or
What is your
explain to him what the
problem?
rules are?
No
Look at it on the agenda?
Yeah, no, I'm saying this is the thing. The reason why I'm here is because there's no option for the Zoom
Stop.
persons to
We are
talk.
not involved in that yet. We are
Okay.
here on a public
That's all I
hearing.
want to know. That's all I
Sir,
want to know. So
sir,
whenever
if you
we're ready
listen
for
to-
the public involvement, I'll be ready to stand up. That's not a problem. And will you be able to address the questions that
Sir,
I have for the
sir,
first agenda?
Sir, do you have questions for Mr. Bignell on the redevelopment study about which he just testified?
Yes. Now you're saying that for the block that you have that's concrete, that's the only spot that you are going to be developing on.
He wants to swear you in.
Swear
That's
me
what
in.
he
No,
wants.
no, 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 no. I don't want to swear anybody in. This is for questions only.
Sure,
Questions only, not statements, questions. There'll be an opportunity for statements.
absolutely.
Now we want questions only.
Okay, that's fine. You ready for the question?
Please, ask your question
Sure.
to Mr. Bignell.
Okay, Mr. Bignell, for
Mr.
the,
Bignell's over here.
sorry, Mr. Bignell, for the development site that we're talking about, in that option, you're saying that they're not going to be doing anything outside of the concrete block. So you're saying that everything else outside of the concrete block is going to have arsenal buried underneath or whatever have you, and there's 60 years or so what of studies being done about that.
That's not what I said.
So what is it exactly that you stated or what he stated?
The property that's in question totals something like 55 acres.
Right.
All I said was, when they asked the question about buried armaments,
Mhm.
there could be possibly buried armaments.
Okay.
My comment was that I doubt very much whether there'd be buried armaments under the concrete.
Okay.
Okay? My guess is the applicant or whoever the redeveloper becomes will clear all that property out, take all the concrete, all that stuff away, and then also dig in the areas that are not concreted right now.
Okay.
So there could be
So
shells
you're saying-
and things there.
So you're saying that there's contaminant already within the area.
Oh,
So
yeah.
you're saying if we're going to develop right now, it's not being developed because of that contamination,
No.
and it's not.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm
Okay.
saying to you that it meets the criteria. There's 7 criteria under the redevelopment law.
Okay.
And one of them is if the property is contaminated. And the studies that were given to us from the federal government indicated that the properties are contaminated. And so we used it as a criteria to say, yeah, it's one of the criteria that the council or the planning board could say, yes, this is in need of redevelopment.
Okay.
Okay.
Do we have any measures in place in regards to making sure that the developers that do take over that property are going to do their due diligence and make sure that everything is decontaminated, one, and that we're not adding on to the burden of the taxpayers in regards to what comes in that place? So if it's going to
Well,
be,
wait, hold on a second.
Sure, go
One
ahead.
question at a time.
sure.
So the first question is, this is just to determine whether the property can be redeveloped.
Okay.
Okay, so that doesn't answer your question about whether or not the property will bring up to a standard. That will come in the redevelopment plan, which is the next step. So as part of the redevelopment plan, it has to be laid out that the redeveloper knows that there's questionable areas and they have to make sure that it meets DEP approval for development. There's 2 levels of approval, one for commercial and then one for residential.
Okay.
Residential, that would never happen because it's just so contaminated. I don't think you could ever get to that level
Good.
here. Okay? So hopefully that answers your question. So
That
that's going to
does.
come at the next hearing, the next time we do a report.
Absolutely.
If the council asks us to do that report.
Can I ask the panel here a question in regards to this development area that we're talking about right now?
Well, they may not be able to answer it for you. So what's the question?
So the question is this: whenever you're discussing this area with or whatever the issues are at place right now in terms of contamination or whatnot, do you plan on allowing any kind of construction in that area that will be a detriment to the residents of Edison, whether it be a warehouse or whether it be housings,
So you-
where
If
it's
I
going to
may,
add on?
can I answer that question, please,
Sure.
sir?
This is
Sir,
our
if I may.
Attorney
Yes,
Rubin.
Michael Rubin here, if I
Yes.
may, sir.
Sure.
This board doesn't have jurisdiction over the environmental cleanup of the property. That's governed by both the Environmental Protection Agency federally and the Department of Environmental Protection on the state level. We could only condition any approval that this board undertakes to entertain on the clearance of the environmental condition on that property by any governmental agency which has responsibility for overseeing that cleanup. That's all we can do. We cannot monitor the cleanup. We cannot have any jurisdiction over ensuring that it's done according to law. Those are other agencies that are higher than this and preempt the authority of this board.
Correct. So my question to you then is, okay, the federal agency responsible for that approves it. Okay, yes, this could be redeveloped. As a planning board, do you have the jurisdiction on who will be able to redevelop or where you're going to sell it or who you're going to sell
Sir,
it to?
that's the planning board. You got to go to the council and talk to the council about that. The planning board only reviews plans.
So this is the planning board, not?
Yes, but this planning board has a statutory responsibility to determine whether or not this property meets the criteria as an area in need of redevelopment. It then has a statutory responsibility to determine whether any proposed redevelopment plan is consistent with the master plan. That redevelopment plan will ultimately be adopted by the governing body, assuming that process continues. that governing body is also responsible for determining who will redevelop that property. This board has no responsibility for determining who will redevelop the property.
Excellent. So that's a great point that you pointed out. So the council and the governing body is responsible for who is going to be getting that property.
Correct.
And then the planning board is responsible to approve
They may
that
not be
plan.
responsible for who gets it because they don't own it. The federal government owns it. They're
Okay,
going to
so
be responsible for approving whomever comes to them with a development plan for it.
Okay, but as the township that this property is around, the government may own it, but the roads and everything is owned by the county as well as the township it's in. So if that's the case, if it's a detriment for the township.
Sir, we're not there. We're not there talking about the development of this property right now.
Okay,
Right now,
fine.
we're
So-
only talking about whether or not it meets the criteria for designation as an area in need of redevelopment. We have to limit our discussion to that point and that point alone.
Okay, we'll come back to that when it comes time, but we'll move on to the next point of view, and then I want to come back for more questions as well.
Okay, and then you please wear the mask. We're all trying to stay masked. I know it's difficult to speak.
I apologize.
And then the redevelopment plan is available for you to look at if you'd like to look at the law.
Absolutely.
So what they were going through, their PowerPoint is going to be on local television for everyone to see. And then also the report there's public access to everything.
Barry? Just, Hank, could you just go through the initial process of the redevelopment and what we do, and that the council asks us to just study whether or not it's an area in need of redevelopment?
Yeah, that's usually put in the first part of the report as well. It tells you the procedure. But what happened was the council asked the planning board to determine whether or not this property by block and lot met the criteria for redevelopment. And then the planning board takes it and authorized me to do the study as a professional planner in the state of New Jersey. And there's a process. First, the Edison Township Council adopts a resolution delineating the study area and directing the planning board to investigate the area, and in this case, a non-condemnation study area. The planning board, via its planner, prepares a study report setting forth the basic investigation and map showing the boundaries of the proposed area. The report and map are made available to the public inspection a minimum of 10 days prior to any public hearing. The planning board conducts a public hearing, makes a recommendation to the township council, recommending to designate all or part of the study area as redevelopment. The township council then adopts a resolution again designating all or part of the study area as a non-condemnation redevelopment area. The township clerk transmits a copy of the redevelopment area designation to the New Jersey Department of Community Affairs and transmits notice for the property owners. The Edison Municipal Council authorizes preparation of a draft redevelopment plan, which may be delegated to or referred to the planning board because the council controls the zoning. The draft redevelopment plan is referred to the planning board for consistency with the master plan within 45 days. So we have 45 days once they submit that to us, that plan, or if we create the plan for them. And then the township council adopts as an ordinance the redevelopment plan following its regular ordinance adoption procedures. And that's the process. So there's a couple of public hearings, and then once that's all done, then the applicant has to make an application to the board with a site plan, preliminary and final, and then the planning board again goes through the normal process of reviewing the site plan, traffic, impact, adjacent land uses, things like that they ask, and making sure it's a safe project.
Now, I also saw that there were some questions from people on Zoom. No one has their hand raised? Okay. So anyone that's on Zoom could speak as well and ask their question.
I actually was on there, and that's the reason why I came here, because
Okay, but you have to speak into the microphone. Come.
No. Stop now. Wait a second. Whoa, stop.
I'm here is because
Sir,
I was raising my hand on the Zoom call and no one was answering it.
Okay.
Sir, there are 45 attendees on the Zoom call. Let's just focus on the matter at hand first before we get to anything else. Let's get through this process, okay? There are 45 attendees. Please. Sometimes people can't get on. I understand that, but I don't know how many that is. You came, we welcome your presence, but let's just focus on the matter at hand, okay?
And we do
So,
have
ma'am-
now a member from Zoom that would like to speak and ask their question.
Right now, it's questions only.
Yes, questions only. And is she speaking or?
You may need to unmute yourself.
Itendra Patel.
Could you please state your name and address for the record and spell your name? You remuted remuted yourself. Mr. Patel, you gave us your name and then you muted yourself again. If you wish to speak, please unmute yourself.
Okay, how about now?
Thank you, we can hear you. Let's start again. Please state your name, give us your address, and spell your name for the record.
My name is Hitendra Patel, H-I-T as in Tom, E-N-D as in David, R-A. Patel is the last name, P as in Peter, A-T-E-L. I live at 21 Morse Avenue. I was wondering that the development plan could be the forestations or building or infrastructures, because we need the more trees. So if the development is becoming in a plan of a development, it is going to be forestations, then it's more welcome compared to the building or something, some other facility that can cause the traffic jam.
Mr. Bignell, do you have a response to that?
Well, this study is to determine whether the property is in need of redevelopment. If the gentleman is looking for more trees, the ordinance that'll probably create the redevelopment plan will probably mimic the tree replacement plan in this township, which is one of the best in the state. And it requires for every 50 feet of linear frontage, a street tree be planted. It requires for every tree that's taken down, it's done by percentage. 4 to 16-inch trees are done by a percentage. If the caliper is bigger than 18 inches, it's the number of trees per every tree that's taken down. We also require a tree for every 1,000 square feet of impervious cover that's created. So there'll be a lot of landscaping planted, or a lot of money into the tree fund to plant in other places in the community. So, but that's down the road. That's not part of the study this evening. Hopefully that answers the
That
gentleman's question.
answers my question.
Hey, is there anyone else with a question?
Bruce? Yes. Bruce? Can you hear me?
Yes.
How you doing? Bruce Tuttle, 56 Columbus Avenue, Edison.
Could you please just spell your name for us, please?
Yeah, B-R-U-C-E-T-U-T-T-L-E.
Great, thank you. Questions only for the moment, sir. Questions only.
My question is on traffic study. I've lived here for 55 years. I've been through a cement company. I've been through an asphalt company here. I lived here my whole entire life, and I know what tractor trailers, cement trucks, paving equipment, it's been years since that's been here. And I don't think we need this again. There's a lot of children in this neighborhood. Like I said, I lived here since the 60s.
Sir, this is a question only time period. What's your question?
Yeah, he's gonna.
No, but he's talking about the Glendale property. He's not talking about the.
Oh, no, we're talking about the redevelopment of the Meadow, the Paper Street Meadow Road down in Raritan Center. That's what we're talking about right now.
Oh, I thought we were still on the Glendale Avenue.
No, we haven't even started that yet, so stick with us, okay?
All right, I thought we were on the Glendale Avenue. My bad.
That's okay. We'll catch up to you, all right?
Thank you, sir.
You got it.
Okay. Anyone else? Questions on the redevelopment for Meadow Road Environmental Protection Agency, known as Block 394, Lot 2? Is there anyone present here? We have 2 people now present. Oh, and there is someone on Zoom? Okay.
Prem Ammon?
And I didn't.
Prem Ammon?
Yes.
Sir, could you please state your name and spell it, and then give us your address?
The name is Prem, Prem as in Mary. The last name is Amin, Amin, 93 Walton Street here in Edison.
Okay, now, this is for questions only, okay? Questions from Mr. Bignell about his study. That's all we're talking about right now, okay?
I'm not sure about this, so you let me know, sir.
Okay.
I just heard that the council had asked the planning board for this investigation.
That's correct.
Is the question appropriate if I asked as to what led the council, what was the basis for asking them for an investigation?
We can't speak to that. We don't know. We're only guided by the text of the resolution they send us, and it doesn't identify why.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, anyone else? Anyone?
Make a motion to close the session.
Okay. All in favor?
But we need to reopen it now for public comment. That was questions only. We need to reopen it for public comment.
Just one moment. Mr. Bignell had a comment?
No, I don't want
Okay.
Mr. Rubin's right.
Okay. So now we're opening for public comment. Again, this is on the redevelopment.
And anybody who wishes to speak will need to be sworn under oath.
Okay. So for this redevelopment, I think Mr. Amin.
State your name and address for the record again, and please be sworn in.
Sure. The name is Mohin, Mohin. Last name is Patel, Patel. The address is 200 Monroe Avenue, Edison, New Jersey. And who needs to
Please swear him in. Oh, I'll swear him in. I'm sorry.
Swear me in.
You swear the firm, you swear from the testimony about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. You may commence.
And is this for the remainder of our conversation throughout the?
This is just
meeting?
as to this particular issue, okay? We are not on any issues. If you're here on another application and feel somehow you've been deprived of your rights as to that application, that's fine. But you're here to speak and ask questions on this application now. So your rights have not been denied. So let's just proceed. Whatever your thoughts are on this particular question, this redevelopment designation, let's hear it, because that's all we're going to talk about right now.
Actually, thank you. Mr. Amin actually brought up a great point. What prompted our elected officials to go in to review this 60-year-old property that has been sitting dormant the way it has been? That's something that I would like to ask that we address with the council whenever or through yourself.
Yes, wait,
Maybe I can help him. All we have is a resolution from council. We have no idea of knowing who asked for what, why it was generated.
So is there
The
a way we could
resolution-
find that
the
out in terms
resolution-
of this resolution itself?
The resolution's in the report, which I'll give you my copy when I'm finished, and it's from November 2019 when they made the request.
Okay.
All right, so it's in there. You have to go to a town council meeting and ask them.
Okay, we'll do that. Thank you so
Hey,
much.
Hank, excuse me a second. Maybe Councilman.
I was
Coyle.
just going to say,
Hold
we
on.
have our councilman right here. Councilman Coyle is here.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I did not attend that meeting
Okay.
in November, so I can refer to Councilman Zendelsky at that time was still in the council.
Excellent, thank you. Mr. Zendelsky, you're the former councilman that has so much development in this town. Can you answer this question for us? What prompted us to look at this particular property in question, which is 55 acres, I believe, right, that you're saying?
Yes.
How did this come about into the conversation of a council meeting and saying, hey, let's develop this property, or let's think about this, let's do an environmental study for this property that's sitting over here for 60 years?
Are you through?
Sure.
So first of all, I did not specifically discuss this with anybody, but I would surmise that because the federal government probably came to the town and said, look, we don't need this property anymore. We'd like to discuss some redevelopment, and let's go through the process to do it. Because as of right now, the town is not collecting $1 in revenue on this. They're not collecting any tax dollars. So I assume that the town is probably trying to make a rateable out of this thing. It's somewhere, shape, or form. And then this property, if we go through with this redevelopment study, would go back to the federal government, and then they would have to go out for a bid on that as to who would buy that property from the federal government. It would be an open bid process.
You brought up an
But
excellent
that's just
point.
that's my, not recollection, because I never discussed this with anybody, but I don't recall this even coming up. to be
So
honest.
that's actually, you brought up a great point. We're looking for tax rateables to increase in this town. Can we go into the matter where all these other properties that we're actually going to be discussing later on, how are they going to be taxed? What rate are we going to be taxing them at? Or what kind of a?
No, we are going far afield. We are focused now on this property, these 2 lots and this redevelopment study. This is not an open public session.
I agree, Mr. Rubin.
So let's focus on the issue at hand. Do you have any more questions of or any more comments with respect to this particular study?
From Mr. Landowski's comment. So I'm actually asking a question prompted by his statement.
This is public comment, not public question. You had public question period before.
So
let's get to public comments now, Mr. Patel.
Why are we looking
Mr.
at tax
Patel, public comment.
when we don't even collect from the ratables that we already have? That's my question.
Okay, but that's not on this application.
Okay, we'll bring that up forward too. Yes,
Okay.
we could move on. That's
Okay,
fine.
because we have rules. There's Robert's rule of, parliamentary procedure. And I really don't want everyone talking over each other,
Oh, right.
okay?
Madam Chair,
Yes,
just a
Councilman Coyle.
clarification to Councilman Sandelsky. The order is the determination first and the study, just to the resident. And you'll have another swing at the plate to discuss what they may propose there. So this meeting, although your questions are significant and people understand why you're asking them, this meeting, there'll be another meeting when they develop a plan there, and you will have a swing at the plate to question what's going there and what the ratables may be at that time. So this is just a determination, and that's why Councilman Zendelsky mentioned all we know, and I don't recall either it coming to the council.
No.
But if it did, it's just for a study. So the study is all what you've seen, and we can give you a copy of this. I think this can be given to you.
And
by
that's
Lily.
why, Mr. Patel, I gave you the answer I gave you, because I don't ever remember this particular property ever even being discussed in any redevelopment committee meetings that I was at. But I would surmise that just from what's happening, the federal government doesn't want this property anymore. They want to see it redeveloped. It's got certain problems with contamination. And it's good for the town if this contamination gets cleaned up and creates a positive rateable for the town. So that's the only reason I see that it's coming before. But like Councilman Coyle said, it's going to come up again. And then the council that sent this over here can have a right to approve or disapprove of whatever the final report is. So then you could come to that meeting and discuss that at the council.
Sure, we'll definitely do that. My only comment on that is that basically this is the reason of my concern for this. We can talk about the contamination and fixing and cleaning and everything after it's all good and dandy and we actually end up selling this property. What we don't have control over is who we're going to sell it to and what's going to come next. That is actually going to affect everybody that's in this town. That is the only concern for this whole thing that I have right now.
And remember, the federal government owns this property now. So if the town decides that we're going to do something with it, or they can do something with it, the federal government will have some sort of bidding process, which I'm sure will be an open bidding process where anybody could bid on it.
But as the planning board or the zoning board or anything all combined, can we say
Mr. Bignell,
say what we can do
if we
regarding
decide
this?
we move forward with the redevelopment plan and the council approves it and everything else, and it goes back to the federal government, wouldn't it be up to the federal government to bid on this and get it sold?
I don't know what their procedures are, but I know like if it was state property or township property, it has to be bid, you have to bid at a public meeting.
I would imagine it's
Public
got to be
auction.
somewhere along those lines with the
I'm sure the federal government's very similar, but I don't know.
So
what
if it's the
their-
case.
Can I just intercede
Wait a
here for a
second.
second? May I, Michael
Wait a
Rubin again.
second, okay?
Just Michael
Everyone's
Rubin, I just want to
supposed
clarify the public bidding question, because just so you know, under state law, if this property is declared an area in need of redevelopment and were to be acquired by the municipality, they could sell it without public bid. whether or not the federal law would similarly allow the federal government to sell any property that has been declared by a municipality as an area in need of redevelopment without public bid. I don't know that, and I'm not sure anybody in this room does. So let's just not assume that it'll be done by public bid. Let's just assume that the federal government owns it, and the federal government has to sell it to someone before it can be developed.
So
Okay.
you have no, so we have as a township no say in what the federal government puts in its place over there?
No, we have every say over what gets developed there. We don't have necessarily a say over who is the developer.
Okay.
So, but
we could say
it's a complicated process because the property is owned by the federal government and not the municipality.
Perfect. So we could put a state park there if we have to, or a federal park if we need to, correct? Instead of a warehouse or housing.
Madam Chair, just point of order.
Thank you.
There'll be plenty of time for him to come up during the other parts of this agenda, other redevelopments. So if you missed the question, the same question will repeat itself for
It's
others.
definitely going to arise for all the other properties. So just
so we can
everyone
move
is
on to
aware.
the agenda.
Just so everyone is aware, those questions will come up for every single property that we have listed right now.
I just want everyone to be aware. The whole idea is to not be speaking over each other. So that's why you usually go through the chair. So anyway, we have to, I want to hear what everyone has to say, but we need to follow some sense of order through this process. Now, do we have anyone else that would like to speak from Zoom? I guess.
Can I ask a question real quick? I'm going to be back on Zoom. Is it possible for us to ask questions on Zoom again?
Yes, yes.
Not about this.
Not about this redevelopment of Meadow Road.
Yeah.
Do we have another person? Attorney Rubin?
I don't know. I don't have anybody.
No, I'm saying we do. We have a person physically present here that
Okay.
would like to speak.
All right.
Could you, Anthony Diamarin, 15 Rodex Circle. I just want to say.
Just slow down. You need to be sworn in first, okay? Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, first you need to state your name for the record, your address, and spell your name.
Anthony Diamarin, D-E space, capital A, M-O-R-I-N, as in Nancy, 15 Rodex Circle in Edison. The fact is that I had to come down here. I can't get on the Zoom meeting. That's absurd. I got a message, and I'm not the only one I have. There's about 30 other people that are trying to come down here now. So,
Sir,
Yeah.
we just want to finish this piece of business, and then we will get to the Zoom issues with respect to the next piece of business, which is why I'm sure you're here. But please first let us finish this piece of business.
yeah, let me state my piece of business.
No,
These
we
warehouses
will,
are-
but let's finish this piece of business. You have some.
No, we're not on warehouse.
Well, I'm not. See, I don't have time to come down here. This is absurd. That we got to come down here. You're putting your head over your forehead, your hand over your forehead, sir. With all due respect,
Because you're not listening to me.
You're not.
Will you
listening-
just please listen to me? Listen
I
to
need
me.
everyone to calm down.
Just
Madam
please
Chair.
listen to me, sir. Sir, I
Madam Chair.
understand that there are Zoom issues, but if you are here and would like to speak as to this redevelopment issue, that's fine. If not, we will get to your Zoom issues as soon as we finish this redevelopment study
Okay, fair enough. Thank you.
question. Okay? Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Wait, Councilman Coyle.
it's coming up next. It's coming up in just 1 minute, what he wants to discuss, so.
Yeah, but he's leaving.
Yeah, okay,
so-
well, they're all referring to the next, and they think it's just, whatever.
Okay.
Okay.
Anyone else?
Make a motion to close. Question?
I'm just checking that there's no one else on Zoom that is raising their hand. Okay. Okay, Mr. Pippola,
Make a motion to close the public question period.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
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 Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve Mr. Bignell's recommendations that this site qualifies for an area in need of redevelopment and forward our recommendations to the Edison Council.
Elaine, did you hear John's second? Okay.
Mr. Jerry?
Yes, to send it to council?
Mr. Pippola?
Yes.
Mr. Correct?
Yes, send to council.
Coyle,
No.
Soltis,
Yes.
Sandowski,
Yes.
Mr. Reader. JJ, you on there? I thought he was on there before.
No.
Jay Reader.
No.
Oh, I thought that someone said he was trying to get on. Okay, we still have a quorum. Approved to go to council.
Thank you. Can we take a 5-minute recess?
Yes, 5-minute recess?
Good.
Good evening, everyone. I'm sorry that this took so long. Whenever the chairwoman is ready to call the matter back to order, I am ready.
Okay.
And I apologize to all members of the public, both in person and who are there on Zoom or on the telephone, who've waited patiently. Thank you. This is Michael Rubin, the board attorney.
Yes, so meeting is now back in session. We have everyone.
Yeah, I think we should perhaps do a roll call, given the extended time and the varying locations.
Mr. Jerry,
Present?
Mr. Pippola,
Here.
Mr. Correct,
Here.
Councilmember Coyle,
Here.
Soltis, Mr. Sandowski,
Here.
Mr. Reader, did you ever get on? Guess not. Okay, that was it.
Okay, we've heard you, and we understand the difficulty that people have had with respect to their attempts to participate in the hearing on the Glendale Avenue and Silver Lake Avenue applications. I have taken the time that we took during the break to consult with the applicant's attorney, Mr. Stephen Tripp, and have suggested to him that in light of the expressed difficulties that the public has had with respect to tonight's meeting and accessing tonight's meeting, that it would be best if we adjourn this meeting and given everybody a chance to, or basically, to be honest with you, to give us, the municipality and the municipality a chance to better figure out how to handle these kinds of meetings when there are this many participants. This is the first one we've done with this many participants. We understand there are glitches with Zoom. We understand that maybe we can perhaps improve upon our Zoom software or whatever we do. I don't know that much about it, but I'm certainly going to take the time and effort to make it better. And we're going to renotice it for September 5th. I mean, for October 5th. There will be a special meeting at 7 o'clock. The notice will explain how to access the meeting in detail. The township will publish a notice as required by the Open Public Meetings Act in the official newspaper twice. The last one at least 2 weeks prior to the meeting, 10 days prior to the meeting, excuse me, which will also include the access information. The access information will also be posted on the township website well in advance of the meeting. We apologize to everyone. I apologize to everyone. I wish I had been there tonight. I should have been. But we can do better. We will do better. And I turn it over to Mr. Tripp.
That's fine. The carry, just to be safe, we will do a renotice with explicit instructions. I don't know what went wrong tonight in terms of that. We followed all the procedures, and we will succeed on October 5th.
Mr. Tripp, do you extend all applicable time constraints?
We will extend until October 5th.
I thought I said October 4th.
No, the 5th, Monday the 5th.
Monday, October 5th.
Okay, I'm sorry.
The regular meeting in October is the 19th.
This is our TRC night.
I know it is.
We'll move it.
All right.
Okay. Or let me just ask a follow-up question. Are we still having the meeting September 14th?
Yes.
Yes.
I just wanted to be clear.
This is October 5th, this one now?
October 5th is this next meeting.
Yeah, and Mr. Tripp is not available on the 14th, which is why we decided to do this as a special meeting instead.
Okay.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Councilman.
I just want to thank you, Madam Chair, and I want to thank our attorney for having a discussion with the applicant. On our part, through our secretary, I know there are requirements that have been met to notify the public. However, it's very nice of the courtesy to delay this to October 5th. As a councilman, I will, on my own, make recommendations to the township outside the requirements to make sure that residents can be notified through our website and have an easy access click-on button. And if there's any instructions that can be given through our TV, I'll make recommendations to the mayor that there can be some type of tutorial how to click on to the Zoom. These recommendations are not part of the requirement by planning board law, but I will ask so that we can have a smooth transition of people accessing the Zoom meetings in the future. So I will make that call to the administration tomorrow. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, we did have one item on our agenda.
We should take a motion to adjourn those applications to October 5th. And then we should take a motion to schedule the special meeting to October 5th also.
Thank you. Okay, so on our agenda under new business, P5 21941 Glendale LLC and P1-202041 Glendale LLC, Glendale Avenue. I would like someone to make a motion.
Make a motion that they be adjourned for this meeting and we move to a special October 5th special meeting to hear these two applications.
Mr. Rubin, do we need to do it in two separate?
No, you can adjourn both of them simultaneously, and you can do it by voice vote as well, so.
And also AC Power?
Well, let's just adjourn these first and let's see where we are with AC Power. Okay, just these for the moment, okay? Because I know there's a lot of people who are involved here in this one, and let's see how many people are involved in that one.
Okay.
All right, so we have a motion on the floor to adjourn these two applications for tonight and to reschedule for October 5th. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, Lillian, do you want to do roll call?
Ms. Ruggieri?
Yes?
Mr. Pippola?
Yes.
Mr. Corrett?
Yes.
Councilmember Coyle?
Yes.
Mr. Soltesz? Mr. Sandelsky?
Yes on the motion.
Motion was approved.
Okay.
Let's just, does everyone in the public understand what just happened and what's going to happen, and that October 5th at 7 o'clock is when this will actually be heard, or will be scheduled to be heard, and new notices will be sent and published in the newspaper? Just Mr. Patel in particular, do you understand that?
Oh, he's not here?
Oh, he left? Okay,
There's no members from, from the
Okay.
public at this point.
fair enough.
Let me just ask, Jim, do we have anyone raising their hand on Zoom? Okay,
I see two, Mr. Loeffler and a Mr. Amin.
Ron Leffer will be first.
Hello?
Yes, Mr. Loeffler, you have a question?
Yeah, I have a generic a planning board meeting question. How many people are you allowing in chambers in person for the next meeting, October 5th?
Well, that requirement or that limitation is established by the state, and currently the limitation is 25 total number of people in any enclosed room. A month ago or so it was 100, which is why we kind of thought we were going to be able to do this. And now that it's 25, we have to figure out a better way to do it. And that's why, one of the reasons why I was thankful that the applicant agreed to adjourn this, so we can do a better job of figuring out how to accommodate this many people.
All right, so in terms of how many people are on the planning board, how many members of the public can attend?
Well, there's 25 people in a room, period, but You know,
How many
there's,
people on the planning board do you
there's
have?
11 members of the planning board, plus there's staff, there's a court reporter, there's the people who run the television. So there's a fair number of people in the, you know, professionals, there's a fair number of people in the room that have to be there. That's one of the reasons I'm here remotely, is to minimize the number of people that are in the room. I recognize that that was a mistake, but putting that aside, we don't know how we're going to work this next time, but we're going to try to accommodate as many people as we can in a room, because we understand that that's people's preference. How we handle that, we've got some time to figure that out. We got to figure it out.
Thank you.
Okay, next person.
Yes, Mr. Mean?
Yes, Mr. Rubin, I was just wondering, we didn't have any glitches on the other property. Can we do this in two parts? What is the glitch here on the postponement?
I don't understand what you're asking me, sir.
I'm saying that we didn't have any issues on Zoom before on the other property.
Well, I
What
mean,
is
there
the
were
glitch?
people who came to town hall who said they were unable to get on the Zoom meeting, and indicated that they knew that there were a fair number of people who were having trouble getting on the Zoom meeting.
Okay.
And that's why we're doing this.
Okay, sir. Thank
Okay?
you. Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
Yes.
Okay, anyone else?
Ask him about the solar. Can we do that one?
Okay, we've now carried this. Let's move on to the next matter on the agenda. Now, anybody who is interested in the next matter on the agenda, which is a Mill Road project, a solar array on Mill Road, if you're not interested and you're perfectly willing to drop off, or you're perfectly willing to stay on.
Okay, let me read it into the record. P5-2020 AC Power 8 LLC on Mill Road, Block 400, lots 4, 5, 6, 7, and 9.
Is David Frank here?
I'm sorry?
There's an attorney for the applicant. His name is David Frank.
Yeah.
And so he should be let into the meeting. If he's still on if he's still on. He was on before.
Madam Chair.
I don't see
Good evening, Madam Chair. David Frank on behalf of the
There
applicant.
you go. There you go. Hello, Mr. Frank. Michael Rubin, how are you?
Okay. I also have video available too.
That would be good.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. How are you?
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
I did have Mr. Councilman Coyle, you had your question?
Madam Chair, just a point of clarification to our attorney. I don't see why we're continuing this agenda knowingly. Mr. Rubin, you made remarks of reasons why we postponing the Glendale application. How are you going to determine moving forward on other applications? Knowingly, you just stated a reason why we postponed Glendale.
Councilman, I was able to speak to Mr. Tripp off the record, but I was not able to speak to Mr. Frank off the record. So I didn't want to lump him in with the Glendale application without having him an opportunity to speak and discuss this. I think that's only the courtesy that we should afford any applicant.
No, and that makes sense. I just wanted to assure that what you put on the record before of a discussion, and most people probably were on the call for Glendale. I can't speak for that, but I
Yeah,
just
I mean,
want to
there's
see
still
where you're-
27 attendees here, so, you know, that's what we're gonna discuss now with Mr. Frank as to how and if we should proceed.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Counselor. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Good evening, Madam Chair, Mr. Rubin, other professionals, members of the board. David Frank on behalf of AC Power 8, attorney at law. We have a BPU deadline for enrollment in the community solar program. We really, at this point, are up against it. and are prepared to proceed at our risk, that members of the public may raise their hand later that they were unable to participate in this. We recognize that all members of the public have a due process right to participate in public hearings on applications, but this is also an application for a permitted use that does not ask for any variances. So as Mr. Rubin will tell you, I'm sure, you know, under the Piso-Manton case, famous case that controls site plans and subdivision applications in New Jersey, this is as close as your board will probably ever get to a purely ministerial type of a hearing. So with those considerations in mind, we are prepared to proceed and really must proceed if we're going to make a project work. And I want to point out that we submitted our application, I believe, if I recall, back in May, and I recognize the difficulties of the pandemic. But we have been before boards in many other municipalities in the state, and I represent a number of boards in other parts of the state, and we're actively conducting hearings through this medium and doing it very successfully. So we're ready to proceed.
Mr. Rubin, can I just ask you a question?
Yes.
September 14th is our next meeting.
Yes, it is. This is really a board call. We're in uncharted territories legally. Notice issues normally are jurisdictional. I think the notice here was effective. I don't know of any mistakes, but perhaps there were. Perhaps, if someone was to compare the Zoom meeting access information in one notice with another, maybe there was a glitch, which is why people can't get on. I don't know the answer to that.
Actually, Mr. Rubin, I have a different sense of things as an observer of your hearing. I actually think that what was happening was not that people couldn't see and hear your hearing, but like me, they were unable to participate directly unless and until you opened up the public comment periods. And
that's not, excuse me, Mr. Frank, that's not the message I got. The message I got was that people were having difficulty logging on to Zoom. And I think that Mr. Patel spoke on behalf of those people when he said, I could not log on to Zoom. I had to come here personally. So I respectfully disagree about that. So either way, this is really up to the board to determine whether they want to proceed with this or not. And it's a dialogue that is really a discretion on the part of the board, not me.
I also want to point out that I am unavailable for either of your two dates. I have an application for a warehouse in Willingboro Township on the 14th, and I have my zoning board in Florence Township on the 5th. So that is an additional pressure that I feel in this instance, and I'm sure that my client will agree with.
I'm glad that you offered that explanation. It explains to me a little bit more, because I thought September 14th still gives us a chance.
Yes.
Now I understand better.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Councilman.
hearing the counselor speak of a deadline with the BPU does raise a question. I'm sure his opening will give hard facts on the renewable energy and what solar panels do. I certainly wouldn't want to interrupt a BPU deadline for solar panels. It's my understanding a good portion of the people are for the Glendale project. If people can access and want to speak in the public comment, and if the attorney is notified by our attorney what risk he's taken, then obviously they're rolling the dice on their own choices. But I wouldn't want to see the application not be heard and interrupt the deadline with the BPU on a renewable energy project.
Go forward with that.
If that, just clarification. Thank you, Madam Chair. That's just for this specific project.
Go for
All right, do we do a vote on this, Mr. Rubin?
You can, however you want to do it, Madam Chair, if you just want to say, just exercise the discretion of the chair and move it or not move it, either one way or the other, I leave it to you.
Mr. Rubin, I just want to tell you that I just got texted by someone from the public, and they said that a flyer was put out with the wrong login information, and they were redirected to the township website, and then they were able to get on. So I think that's what happened with this other case. Now, I don't know how many other people are going to be affected by this, but that's what I was just told.
Yeah, I mean, the applicant's ready to proceed, so, if the board's comfortable, obviously the applicant's comfortable, and I leave it to them.
Madam Chair, I, for one, would recommend that we move forward on this application.
I don't see there's a reason why we can't have it. The applicant wants to have the hearing. We're here. It's a solar array that's foundations around the ground. I don't see an issue with having the hearing. I mean, it's like, we should do it. If he
Well,
has
the
time-
applicant enters at his own risk, too.
That's correct, and the applicant has indicated that they're prepared to move forward under those circumstances.
That is correct.
So I think then I think that it may be appropriate then. Any other comments, Mr. Corrett?
No, I feel we should move forward with this. It's a solar array, and where it's being put is not going to cause any issue for anybody.
Okay. All right. Applicant, please present your case.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. There are two witnesses that should be in your waiting room. One of them is Christopher Rosati, who is our professional engineer, and the other is Annika Colston, who is principal of AC Power, the company whom I represent. Can we please let them in?
Wait 1 second.
Okay, we've located him.
In addition, Kyle Miller, who is the project manager for this project on behalf of AC Power, should also be in your waiting room. And if we could allow him in as well, that would be very helpful.
I'm sorry, Michael, who?
Kyle Miller.
And then two other people. Dave, say who are the other people?
Christopher Rosati, Annika Colston, and Kyle Miller.
Oh, Chris Rosati.
Chris Rosati, Rosati,
Got him.
and Annika Colston, who has AC Power next to her name as well.
Okay.
Great, thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Frank, you may proceed.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Do you want to do an opening, however you want to do this?
I think probably the most efficient thing for me to do is to introduce Ms. Colston to tell you a little bit about the Community Solar Program, which this project is intended to be a part, and then to have qualified Mr. Rosati and have him offer his expert testimony, some orientation about the site and that sort of thing. And then if we need additional detail with regard to the Community Solar Program, we can bring in either Ms. Colston or Mr. Miller at that point. So with that, Mr. Rubin, if would it be more efficient for you to swear in all three of my witnesses?
No, let's do one at a time, okay?
Okay.
Ms. Colston, do you solemnly swear from the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, please state your name and spell it for the record and give us your address.
Annika Colston, Annika Colston. My address is 264 East Broadway, New York, New York.
Mr. Frank,
Yes.
you may proceed.
Okay. Ms. Colston, can you tell us a little bit about the community solar program, where this energy is going to go and all that good stuff?
Yes, I can. Thank you. Thank you to Edison Township and everyone that is participating in this meeting. This project is the Edison is a 1 megawatt solar project that will be placed on a portion of the closed Kinbuck landfill. We submitted the project to the New Jersey Community Solar Year 1 program in September of 2019. It was awarded. There were 225 applications submitted and 45 applications were awarded for a total of 75 megawatts. AC Power was fortunate to receive 4 of those awards, and this Edison project is one of them. The award was made in December, as I said, December of 2019, and the projects are expected to be up and operational within 1 year of the award. Given the unexpected consequences of a pandemic, there have been two-month extensions put in place. So we are expecting to start construction, to start operation by the end of Q1 2021. The community solar program is designed to allow individual subscribers, residents, and commercial and industrial businesses to purchase solar electricity from these local projects. So for those residents or companies who cannot install their own solar facility on their roof or their business, they can buy into a community based program. The Board of Public Utilities is committed to serving low and moderate income families, and so 50% of all of the output has to be set aside for low and moderate income subscribers. I think that's high-level overview.
Okay. If there are no questions, Madam Chair, from the board for Ms. Colston about the community solar program and the generality of those things, I'll move on to Mr. Rosati and have him give an orientation to the site and tell us about what we intend to build. Is that
Please
acceptable?
proceed.
Thank you.
Mr. Frank, could you have Ms. Colston put her what's her title, what's her position with AC Power? Just give me some background on her, just so I know what to put in the resolution as to who she is.
Yes, absolutely. I'm the president and founder of AC Power. I founded AC Power in 2016. Our mission is to develop solar projects on landfills and other low-value marginal land. I have been developing renewable energy projects along the East Coast for 20 years.
Thank you. That's all I needed.
Great. Mr. Rubin, will you please swear in Mr. Rosati?
Mr. Rosati, do you solemnly swear affirm the testimony about to give us the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Please state and spell your name for the record and give us an address.
Christopher P. Rosati, Rosati, with FWH Associates, Toms River, New Jersey.
Okay, great. Mr. Rosati, can you give us the benefit of your professional education and other credentials, please?
Yes, I'm a graduate of Rutgers University College of Engineering, graduated in 1994. Since 1994, I've been involved in civil site engineering for various land development projects, from a single family plot plan on up to a several hundred unit residential development. Our firm also handles several solar projects throughout the state and in other states in surrounding New Jersey. I have been involved again in land development for my 26-year career. I'm a licensed professional engineer in the state of New Jersey.
That's what I was waiting for. Okay.
Thank you. Sorry about that.
Have you testified before this board?
Yes, I have this. I've testified before the Edison Planning Board and their zoning board as well.
Okay, we'll accept you as an expert in your field.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Okay, Mr. Rosati, can you please give us an orientation to the site and then start to tell us about what we intend to build?
Yes. Do I have screen sharing capabilities?
Yes, you should.
Thank you. All right, I have several exhibits. I'll start with the aerial photo because that'll help orient us to the site. As we already discussed, we are on the Kinbuck landfill.
And Mr.
And our-
Rosati, has this previously been marked, or shall we call this Exhibit A1, Mr. Rubin?
Yes.
Okay, we'll call this A1.
And
Sorry, go ahead.
we're gonna need to have a hard copy submitted to the board subsequent to the hearing.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
So A1 is an aerial exhibit, ground mount photovoltaic system, Kinbuck landfill, Mound B. So to orient everybody, the Kinbuck landfill is on an extension of Meadow Road. It's actually gated off because, again, this is an EPA Superfund site also. If you can see in the upper left corner where the hand is kind of waving at you, that is the local boat launch area along the Raritan River. So to our north, south, and east, we're bounded by vacant landfill property. Our western boundary is the Raritan River and its associated floodway. The uses, again, are still our vacant property and the river itself. As you know, the site contains disturbed areas associated with the closed landfill. It's a closed, inactive landfill. There's environmental remediation equipment on site, but other than that, it is vacant. We are proposing to install ground mount solar panels over an approximately 7-acre portion of the site, concentrated in the southwest corner. The system is slated to provide 0.85 megawatts of electricity to the grid through the community solar program that Ms. Colston already talked about. Let me see if I can go to the colored rendering. This, I guess this will be A2. Something's going on here. Hold on. It's not letting me. There we go. I'm sorry. A2 is a colored rendering of the site plan sheet that we submitted and everyone should have a copy of, but we will submit this as well to the board for records. So the solar panels will be attached to ballasted steel frames. We are on this closed landfill, so we are subject to NJDEP and EPA requirements. So there will be zero ground penetration or excavation of the cap area. So to this end, even leveling and the conduit will be buried through imported fill versus any sort of ground disturbance. DEP and EPA have jurisdiction over all our site operations and construction activities, and permit applications for the proposed project is currently under review. The only proposed excavation on site, I'll try to blow up A2 a little bit. Down in the southern section, we are showing a proposed utility pole along the extension of Meadow Road. The utility is requiring that our connection to the grid be done through a new utility pole. So the utility will own the utility pole and a transformer that's off the Mill Road as well. So again, the only penetration will be that utility pole. And again, that's in order to keep the integrity of the cap. The number one priority of the DEP and EPA is the integrity of this cap and protection of what they call potential receptors. Potential receptors are, of course, people, the river, any flora and fauna in the area as well. So we have two arrays, Array A and Array B. Array A is the larger of the two, as you can see on the exhibit, and that is to the west of Meadow Road, and Array B is the smaller area adjacent to the environmental control equipment. Each solar panel is about 6 feet by 4 feet in size, and they're wired together in strings and connected to inverters that convert the DC electric to AC electric. From those inverters, everything is standard AC electric and governed under the standard code. The steel frames, again, as I said, will be mounted on concrete ballast structures, again, so we don't have any penetration to the cap. From the inverters, the electrical feeds will run on grade, which is on cap grade, and it will be an in conduit, but the conduit will be buried with some imported fill for protection of the conduit. The conduit will go towards the equipment area and cabinets with switch gear and transformers, what have you. Again, that's in the south east corner of Array A, again along Meadow Road. The arrays or the array rows are laid out in rows 10 feet apart. A 15-foot access aisle is going to be in place around the array to allow maintenance people to maintain the site in an easy fashion. The typical height of the panels on the north side or the rear of the array is approximately 8 feet, with a maximum being around 10 feet if we have to do any sort of leveling from one side to the other. Obviously, should the board act favorably, detailed structural drawings and calculations will be part of a building permit package. Again, we talked about the different sizes of the arrays. Array A will produce about 88% of the total output of the facility, and Array B will do the balance. Very limited impervious surface on the site. The only associated impervious surface are the two concrete pads associated with the equipment, one for the array and the switchgear, and the second for the utility-owned transformer. Useful life of the array is, we typically say 25 to 30 years. If it's taken care of, it can last much longer than that. We get, I'll try to hit the typical questions we get asked for these types of projects. One is people want to know, is there going to be glare off the array? The array reflectivity is very low, on the order of 4%. What we want to do is actually capture as much of the sunlight as possible. It's a very absorptive material. So a glare issue is not what we are going to be resulting. As far as drainage, again, we have very little impervious due to these two equipment pads. We are essentially on a landfill cap, which is essentially an impervious surface itself. So there will be almost immeasurable increase in impervious surface. Therefore, stormwater facilities are not warranted, nor are they proposed. The applicant will provide a meadow seed mixture throughout the area of the array. Per your professional's review, we will provide a stormwater management narrative, basically outlining what I said in 2 sentences in a little bit more detail to show the reasons why stormwater management facilities are not proposed, nor are they required. The site is to the east. Again, we're against the Raritan River, so there's a mapped floodplain associated with it. And we relocated our equipment. The initial proposal had some equipment on the south side within that flood fringe area. We removed all disturbance outside the flood area. As far as traffic or workers at the site, once the site is constructed, maintenance and equipment checks for the first month, as far as fine tuning the system, you're looking at once a month for initial troubleshooting, and then you're looking at quarterly visits for maintenance. And it's the maintenance personnel or the equipment's going to be on the order of a work van or a small pickup truck with 1 or 2 people doing the maintenance. Due to the low volume of traffic, therefore, there's no parking facilities proposed. And the site will be mowed about 2 to 3 times per year. We are requesting 3 technical waivers from the ordinance based on the location of the facility and the level of activity that we're proposing. One is the township ordinance requires a 50-foot buffer from any flood limit. While the entire array is beyond the FEMA mapped flood elevation, a portion of Array A relies within that additional 50-foot buffer. Due to the fact that the area is already disturbed with the capped landfill, we feel it's appropriate to have this previously disturbed capped area be occupied by additional solar panels, thereby increasing the yield of green energy for the site. The second waiver is for providing a landscape plan and street trees for the site. I think I should go to A1, the aerial photo. See if I can bring that up. To show where we are in the world and how remote we are. And the Meadow Road is gated off adjacent to the boat launch area. So the public does not have the ability to travel along Meadow Road in this area. So as the site is under DEP EPA jurisdiction, no excavation is allowed. Coupled with the fact that we are accessed by a gated road, we feel a waiver from providing additional landscaping and street trees is appropriate. I know there is a walking path along the Raritan River in this area, but you will not be able to see the array from that walking path. There's already existing growth associated with the floodplain area, and if anyone's been out there, it's very thick to the east of that walking path. And it's hard to see where we're going to be with the array, especially given that the array is going to be so low.
Mr. Rosati, did you actually go to the walking path and walk it yourself?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And just to hit that point again, with regard to landscaping, since we're actually forbidden by the DEP and EPA to dig holes, that means we can't dig holes to put in trees. Is that not correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And one more question on that. Are we also going to provide a fence around the solar array?
Yes, we are providing a fence around the solar array for security purposes, and the fence itself will also be ballasted because we're not allowed to penetrate that cap.
So it's going to be basically mounted on concrete blocks, each pole, correct?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. Sorry to have interrupted you. Please continue.
No problem. The third waiver is for providing site lighting. The site is accessed again via the gated access road, which is currently closed. Additionally, site maintenance activities will take place during daylight hours. So in our opinion, site lighting is not necessary. And again, all site improvements will be fenced for security. With regards to the pipeline buffer, we feel we are going to be compliant with the pipeline buffer, especially given the fact that we are doing zero ground penetration, except for the utility pole, which will be installed by the utility, not the applicant. So in our estimation, we are compliant with that ordinance.
Mr. Rosati, have we called for a mark out for utilities to confirm that we're not going to have any pipelines?
Yes, we did, but due to the fact that it's gated off, we're having an issue with actually having people tell us that they were actually actively out there and confirming that there was nothing out there. So we're still working on that, but we will provide that as hopefully as a condition of approval.
Thank you.
Outside agency approvals, obviously we need DEP under major landfill disruption permit and a stormwater construction general permit 5G3. We got an exemption letter from the Soil Conservation District, and will also need Middlesex County Planning Board approval, but we are estimating that's going to be a letter of no interest, but to date, we have not received that. Obviously, there's concerns that your professionals raised over the landfill itself, and both of them were raised about keeping the integrity of the landfill cap and potential cleanup infrastructure. Again, the applicant we're currently working with the DEP staff to ensure exactly the same thing. The DEP is reviewing the project relative to the safety of the landfill cap and the treatment equipment. Through continual guidance with DEP staff, the proposal is for the ballasted arrays and the ballasted fence to avoid deleterious effects on the integrity of the cap. And of course, we will supply the township with all approvals and possible plan revisions resulting from DEP review, and where appropriate, additional details will be added to our site plan for clarity. All site elements, again, are subject to building department review and approval, and structural calculations, including any wind loads, will be supplied with the building permit application. All the improvements will be performed with lightweight equipment. Prefabricated footings will be utilized to minimize the requirement of heavy equipment and concrete trucks driving on the cap itself. As far as emergency services, the applicant is offering to provide orientation to the Edison first responders for proper protocols within the solar array. So in closing, it's a fairly innocuous application in my estimation. It's an existing closed landfill where nothing can be done. And we are trying to install green energy with the 0.85 megawatt solar array on top of this closed inactive landfill, trying to minimize site disturbance as much as possible. Traffic impacts are somewhat negligible in my estimation. And we are proud to present this to the board for AC Power.
Great. Mr. Rosati, just two more questions for you, if I may, please. If you can go back to that aerial exhibit that you had previously and show that to us one more time. Are you aware of any remediation infrastructure for the landfill that is within the footprint of our arrays?
No, the only infrastructure that we have found thus far are the monitoring wells that are shown on this plan, 1, 2, and 3. Other than that, in the area it's called Mound B, there are no like vent stacks or collection equipment or anything.
Okay, and if there were, obviously that would be within the control of the NJDEP, correct?
100%. It should something, again, during review, because we are going back and forth with DEP personnel, if they need something relocated, we will have to do so, absolutely.
Okay, great. And do you have available by any chance from your plan set an elevation that shows the detail of the pad for the rack and the arrays? We have that in our plan set?
Yes, I'll just give me a second. Is this what you're looking for?
That's exactly what I'm looking for. Can you just help the board to sort of see what they're looking at?
Absolutely. So this is a cross-sectional view of the solar panel, the proposed solar panel array. At the bottom, you'll see a rectangular shaded area. That's going to be the concrete ballast. The ballast footing will be placed on grade. The steel structure that will support the solar panels, which are shown this like thin cross section on the angle, the steel structure will support the connection of those panels. Again, we've talked about those panels being about 4 by 6 in size. So it's either these are going to be stacked one on top, so a double stacked array. And again, the array will be, the panels will be bolted to the steel frame. The steel frame will be bolted to the columns, which will then be bolted to the ballast, which will then just be placed on earth and held there by gravity and its own weight.
Great, thank you. That's really helpful. Madam Chair, if the board or any of the professionals have any questions for Mr. Rosati, I would ask that he be.
Madam Chair. This is Don Corrett, Madam Chair. Mr. Rosati, how much wind can these panels take on a ballast? Because this Raritan Valley here gets hit with some pretty good hurricanes and high winds.
Yes. Should the board act favorably, there'll be a structural engineer employed to design both the ballast and the steel frame itself, and it will be based on the current wind loads that are required in that part of the world to show that, you know, under whatever extreme forces that are required under code, that the ballast, again, you have one thing, you have tip over, but you also have to make sure that the panels themselves don't come flying off the array, and that's what they do with their calculations, which will all be sent to the building department for a peer review.
Thank you.
Mr. Sandowski?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for your presentation. It was a very excellent one, and I always like to see people repurposing fallow land like this and using it for a good purpose like green energy. One of the problems the town has been having out there by the boat basin is we haven't been able to get power out there in order to put cameras out there. We have a gazebo, we have a walkway. If the board does look favorably upon this approval, could you guys assist us in providing some power there for those purposes?
What I would say about that is that that's probably a conversation that we could have with township officials to see what the actual construction of the power that is at the landfill already is, and how that will connect with us, and whether there's any functional way for us to bring power to you. I think you're talking about it in a physical sense. So that's something that we really need to deal with, I think, at the level of administration and the like. From the perspective of the business side of things, I think that one of the purposes of the community solar program is to bring affordable energy into the grid. And so I believe that the municipality is also eligible to be a customer of this particular generating site. And typically that's done on very favorable terms compared to your typical commercial power purchase. Does that answer your question, Councilman?
No, I'm not on the council anymore.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. We have had vandalism problems out there at the gazebo, and I guess it's more of a physical thing. You know what I mean? Like we can't get power out there for a camera on that side along the walkway, and we were looking to provide some power and light out there. You know, so if it can be physically done and you could work that out with the people in the township, our building official and the rest of the town, I would, we would really appreciate it.
So we're amenable to being helpful to the physical challenge. And if there's a way that our site can help you achieve that, I'm sure that my client would be happy to work with the town to do that. I don't think, though, that it's something that we can, from here, design into this project, or quite frankly, make a condition of any approval that the board might grant, that we would actually make that connection for you. I just don't know if it's physically possible, financially feasible. But we'll certainly work with the town to see if something can be achieved.
Yeah, thank you. That would be very helpful if you could do that. Thank you.
Chair.
Yes, Mr. Pippola.
Mr. Bignell, on your report, you have indicated a lot more information required on several aspects. You had items A through R request. I tried to keep track. What is your opinion of the presentation by Mr. Rizzotti, and has he answered all your concerns?
Yeah, I'm satisfied with his testimony. The no lighting, landscaping and landfills. It's out in the middle of really nowhere, and it's a real good use for a closed landfill. Emergency signage, maybe, would there be anything like that out there on the fencing? And
we are certainly amenable to providing that. Contact information, et cetera. Yes. And I want to highlight also, I want to punch home that point that Mr. Rizzotti made, which is that we are very happy to provide orientation on safe entry and operation within the facility to your first responders, both initially and periodically, as you may ask for it, as they may ask for it, so that we're assured that in the event that they need to enter the site, that they can be safe for themselves and everyone else.
I noticed on the plan also that it said no security cameras. You don't see the need for any kind of security?
All of this stuff is monitored by way of remote telemetry, and I think Ms. Colston, you may be better able to respond to this. Your microphone's off than I. Can you tell us a bit about that?
We generally do not install cameras and haven't found the need or for them to be particularly necessary. So we have fencing, and then we have remote monitoring to know that the system is performing. And then there are further safeguards if there's something beyond, security that's needed that will ensure that a number of things go into effect to shut down the system or alert people to an issue. And quite there, the landfill is already gated and has some signage to deter people from entering at the front, and then we'll have an additional fence around the solar facility. So, and then not to mention the fact that it's almost impossible to access from the river's edge due to all of the brush that's grown in there. So we feel that it's, in terms of security, site security, it's a highly secured site.
Okay, Mr. Bignell,
Yes, ma'am.
you had a comment, an
No,
additional comment, or,
I'm satisfied. Yes, ma'am.
okay.
Also-
Mr.
also-
Pippola?
Yes, also, Mr. Carley,
Moving around enough.
Mr. Carley, the request for a 50-foot buffer on the floodplain area, do you have an opinion on that?
Thank you, Mr. Pippola. Ultimately, a lot of the things that I raised in my report, the folks at KWH did a good job responding to my first review. But as they indicate, and when I wrote my first review, I acknowledged it. A lot of the things in my first review would be things that would be touched upon by the Department of Environmental Protection, their Solid Waste Management Division. I imagine that we have to go about the process of the landfill closure plan to accommodate this. And so we look forward to that, receiving a copy of the amendment to the landfill management plan at some point. So most of those issues will be resolved by DEP at that future time, if the board looks favorably upon the application. Am I speaking, am I speaking Greek, Mr. Rosati, or am I speaking English?
Complete English, and we agree. I mean, we will be, like I said, we've already, even before we submitted to DEP, we've been back and forth with them, and we understand that they are the ultimate arbiters of what we can and can't do. And once we have their approval, we will share everything with the township. And again, if we feel that adding details to our site plan makes sense to be like a belt and suspenders approach to making sure the thing gets built correctly, we will do that.
Yeah, no, like I said, those things that the local officers, the town engineer, and the construction official will need, I think you've incorporated into the site plan. But those other things that are comments in my report, you're going to have to deal with DEP.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
So another question?
One more question. Just
Yeah, Mr. Pippola.
Just a general question to both of our consultants. As I'm listening to the testimony, there still seems to be a lot of unanswered questions. I think the applicant is waiting for approval. I'm thinking out loud to my fellow board members and everything. When the question comes up for a final vote, is a preliminary approval more appropriate than a final approval? I ask that as just an open to think about as we're hearing the presentation.
I do think there's another witness, right? The applicant still has another witness?
I don't intend to call Mr. Miller unless we have some questions for him that we need to ask. But I just want to point out that under the very, very famous holding, almost as famous as Piezo Manton of Manalapan Holdings Company v. Hamilton Township, all of our municipal land use boards have an obligation to hear and decide applications under their ordinances, and then to allow for outside agency approvals to come in to deal with the matters that are within the jurisdiction of those outside agencies. It's actually not permissible for boards to condition approvals, such as a final approval, on someone first obtaining the outside agency approval. Each is sort of the chicken and the egg problem, right? And the courts have come down squarely on the idea that it's necessary for your board to decide things under your ordinances, and then we'll deal with the other agencies' issues as we address them.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Mr. Bignell?
I'm satisfied with the testimony in my report. I went through all my comments, and he's pretty much answered all my concerns. So that helps, Mr. Pippola.
Thank you.
All right, sir.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Mr.
I have a
Sandusky.
question for Mr. Bignell. Mr. Bignell, wasn't there also another solar array out there on a landfill that we did once before? Out in
Yeah,
that
I
area?
believe so.
Yeah, next door.
And how did we handle the landscaping for that particular solar array? Do you remember?
I believe it was waived. I don't think they had to pay into the tree for, but I think that one was.
I'm just saying whatever we did there, I would assume
Yeah,
we would try
I
and
don't
do
remember
this.
offhand, so I don't want to say, exactly. I could check it for you and let you know, but
Okay,
I don't know how that affects tonight's meeting.
okay, thank you.
And Madam Chair, if I might, I'll rely on Mr. Rubin to double check my disinformation. I believe this application is for minor site plan, so I don't know that there's a preliminary and final aspect to it. I think it's just minor site plan.
That's how it's identified on the application cover sheet.
Yeah.
Mr. Carley, you're a better lawyer than I am.
I've been working at it for about 30 years. Although I got to tell you, Mr. Rubin earned his money tonight.
Okay. Any other questions or comments?
Madam Chair.
Yes, Councilman Coyle.
Thank you, thank you. To our expert, Hank Bignell, could you walk me through the waivers? They're asking for 3 waivers. Could you identify the waivers and what we're giving them and what they're requesting?
Yeah, I think they seek a waiver for landscaping and tree replacement, which they've given testimony, you really can't plant on top of a landfill, and they're out in the middle of nowhere, so it's going to be up to the board to decide whether this should be a contribution to the tree fund. There's no impervious cover. There's very limited street access, so there'd be very few trees that they really have to plant out there. There's no parking lot, and they're not cutting anything down, so there's not, maybe a couple of trees, that's at the most. And I think they're also looking for a waiver to the lighting plan. And again, if they're satisfied with their security, I have no reason to oppose a waiver to a lighting plan that's, out in the middle of nowhere. I'm not sure what the third one is. I don't,
I think it's a 50-foot buffer on the flood zone.
Mr. Carley should maybe comment on that. I don't, a buffer to what? To the
Floodplain.
To a floodplain, to a river. I mean, buffers are usually to protect something. I don't know what you're protecting at this point, other than they're putting up their panels. I'm sure the buffer's not meant to keep the flooding out. It's probably meant to keep for a visual thing. I don't think you really need a visual thing, because he's testified you can't see it even from the walking path. So I'm comfortable with those 3 waivers. I hope that helps you, Councilman.
Thank you. How far is the buffer? What is the?
Well, the Councilman, Madam Chair, to Councilman Quill, the first iteration of the plan showed some of the solar arrays within the flood hazard area, and those were moved out. There is minor encroachment into the buffer to the floodplain, but using DEP regulations, if you're not blocking the flow of water in a floodplain, it's permissible. These arrays are essentially concrete cookies upon which you'll have legs set, and on top of those legs, you'll have the solar panels. So there is very remote chance of the flow of water in a floodway or a floodplain being obstructed. And so that was really the basis of my opinion.
What is the distance between the buffer they're requesting and what is in the ordinance?
I'm looking at it. I would say it's 35 versus 50.
Repeat that again?
I would say it's 35 versus 50.
And let me ask you, what is the difference between other applicants that face this board that have to go to the 50 feet? And why is this an exception?
Well, because of the nature of the structure. It's not a solid structure. A house is a solid structure. It occupies some of the volume of a flood. These arrays don't occupy the volume of a flood. And they're set back some distance from. As a matter of fact, because the Raritan River is tidal, you'd find that if they went to the DEP for a permit to occupy the floodway, the DEP likely would grant a permit. There's different distinctions in the rules relative to flood zones, floodways, and wetlands, particularly when one set of them are associated with tidal floodways and floodplains. Because I suspect, not having studied it terribly deeply, but it's a 50-year-old set of regulations that the folks that wrote the regulations recognized that you're not really going to overcome the tides and the ocean. And so just if you're going to build in those tidal areas, make sure that you have things that don't obstruct the flow of water.
And to the applicant or to the engineer, the expert, what is the design look? Or can you walk me through, if I'm on a boat on the river, do I see this panel set up?
I don't think you will. I'll go back to A1, the aerial photo.
Absolutely.
If you can see the hand waving at the end here, this is the walking path that I'm traversing with the hand. That's, I don't know, on the order of 10 to 15 feet higher than the river. Again, based on when this river was shot and the tides at the time. But I'm 6 feet tall, and when I was walking on this path, I could not see where the array would be on this on Mound B. So if you're in a boat in the river, you're even lower than I was, and in my opinion, you will not see it.
I find it hard to believe it's not going to be the new landscaping of a boat ride along our river.
Between the walking path and the array, or even the Mound B itself, there is a ton of Phragmites and other brush that's not even part of the landfill itself, that's on the order of 8 to 10 feet high in some spots. It's very thick in there, and it's very difficult to see. I don't have a boat, and I never rode a boat on the Raritan River here, so I wouldn't know offhand, like exactly, but in my opinion, based on what I saw from the walking path, you are not going to see much of anything, if anything, from the river as far as seeing the array itself. And again, the array is only 8 feet high at its highest point.
Repeat that again. You said the panels are only 8 feet high at the highest point?
Yeah, at the highest point, yes.
From the ground level?
From the ground level, yes.
And what else? You mentioned there's a buffer, there's a request for the pipeline buffer. Can you walk me through what you discussed on the pipeline?
Yeah, well, we all obviously know the reason why that's part of Edison's ordinance. I was actually a student at Rutgers University in 1994 when we had the major issue there, and I could see it from, I don't know, 15 miles away. So the ordinance requires that we indicate that we are not going to be within a certain distance, I forget it off the top of my head, of any gas transmission line or fuel transmission line. So my testimony is that we requested a utility markup, but it's been difficult to get one due to the fact that this site is gated and closed off because it's the closed landfill. But it's my testimony that I'm confident that there are, again, we're not penetrating the ground aside from the utility pole, so there will be no disruption to any underground utility.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Mr. Bignell.
We don't sign off on the final resolution compliance unless we get the letters from the pipeline saying that it's not there. So he has to get the letter still, but we don't sign off unless we have them.
So what to your attorney, is this a condition on whether there's a pipeline there or not? Because you didn't identify before this application that there is or isn't a pipeline?
I would suggest that the condition of approval is that we have to demonstrate that our project is compliant with your ordinance standard. And how we go about that is, I think, something that we'll work out with Mr. Bignell, Mr. Carley, Mr. Rubin. Sounds as though you have a routine of getting a particular letter from the pipeline companies that say that they're not on us. And if that's what you get, we'll do our best to get that. What we've asked for is for all of the utilities to mark out our site. I'll represent to the board that we have performed a title search for our property, and it does not return any easements that would indicate to us that on our property that there are any such issues. But going the extra step, we've also called for all utilities, including the local gas company and other things, to mark out our site and the adjoining area so that it can be confirmed to Mr. Rosati's office that we're nowhere near your pipeline. So it would be a condition of your approval, if you were to grant one, that we comply with the standard of your ordinance. And that's fine. We'll do that. And we'll demonstrate that to your professionals.
Excuse me, Dave?
Yes, ma'am.
I have contact people for you to get in touch with.
Oh, that'd be wonderful. Thank you very much, Lillian.
Google it and they give you a letter, okay?
Can you please email that to us?
Not tonight, but I'll get it to you tomorrow.
Thank you very much.
And back to the engineer, to the expert engineer. Can you walk me through the exact location to give me the destination of where the boat ramp is? And I'm also on the landfill committee, and I just wanted to have some questions of where our landfill is, if we're talking about the Edison landfill, and where your pad site is for this solar panels, and where the boat dock is. Can you bring that exhibit up?
Yes. I'll have to zoom out a little bit. So where the hand is waving in this upper left corner, that is the boat launch in the end of the parking lot. This, where the hand is, that kind of like a beige line with the angles, that is the, I guess the Trex deck that goes from the parking lot then to the gravel path. And right where the hand is, I believe, is the gazebo that we were talking about before with the potential issues with vandalism, what have you. So in between, you can see this little cut that goes in. There's a small tributary to the Raritan. And if there's that bridge structure that crosses from the parking lot to the walking path. And so we'll be, once you start on that gravel walking path going north to south, the array itself will be, you know, a couple hundred feet away from that edge of the waterway.
And where's the landfill? Can you point to the landfill?
The landfill is this entire tract right here where I'm circling. The aerial photo doesn't even cover the entire landfill. The area that we're talking about for our application is known as Mound B, and that is this area that I'm kind of waving at you with the hand in a circle.
And so I understand the deed ownership here. This is a separate parcel that's adjacent to our landfill that your applicant has possession of?
I can address that, Mr. Rosati. The area that we are proposing to lease is owned by a company called Philcrest, and they own it in fee. That is different ownership than some of the other landfill parcels, but they own all of what we intend to build on and intend to rent from them.
And last, have you been a part of any of the landfill committee discussions, or have you been involved with CME, who's doing the engineering on that site or around that site?
Ms. Colston is indicating a negative on that. We've not been involved in either of those things. This is a Superfund site. It is essentially managed by a consortium of potentially responsible parties. That's a term of art many of you are probably familiar with under federal environmental law. That group is led by a piece of waste management, which I'm sure you're all very familiar with. It's a very large national company that's involved in sanitation. And so we're really at arm's length from all of those processes about how landfill closure is being undertaken and all of those sorts of things. The area where we're proposing to build is very stable. It has been stable. There are 5-year reports published on it. Once again, we're not involved in what you're discussing.
And I would just add that this area has probably no less than 7 landfills within, a 5 square mile area. The industrial land reclamation site is nearby, which has solar on it. The Edgeboro landfill right across the river in Sayreville, I believe, has solar on it. And there are other properties that are owned, that are part of the Kinbuck landfill that are have other owners that may be pursuing solar independently. And then there is the Edison landfill. So there are many landfills and many different owners and players in the area.
I don't question the opportunity. I don't question the renewable sense of what this measures to, but what I question is the overlap of what the landfill committee is doing to that area in the wells. I think former Councilman Sandelski can also attest that there are two changes happening to that part of the landfill, and we haven't met those final instructions to our engineer. And I wouldn't want to see.
I just think it's a different landfill is what I.
Councilman Coyle, just to kind of straighten you out, this is the Kinbuck landfill, correct? Where we're talking about right now?
Yes.
Okay, and this has been closed for how many years and capped? How many years?
30?
So this is not the Edison landfill that we're working on right now, which isn't closed, which hasn't been capped, which hasn't been touched. This is a different, separately owned landfill. That was a different, there's a lot of landfills there, but this is just one of them. But this one's been closed, capped, and has nothing to do with what we're trying to do in Edison, trying to close that landfill. It's got nothing to do with it.
Well, that's the verification I need, and I appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Sandelski. The other issue I have is, residents in that area are concerned with the cosmetic look of the river coming down in that area. There are plans in the future of redevelopment there with the boat dock and dressing that whole area up, which would include, coming down that area where our walking path is. So I don't feel comfortable not knowing where the valley or the peak of these panels are and what the new landscape look will be coming into our river boat dock, and whether the residents want to see all these panels there. And I have to say this look isn't a landscape design in some areas, of the river, because you've mentioned a few locations, just that this will happen to be part of the gateway to our boat dock. So where can you explain to me that the sight distance of the boaters in that landscape area is not going to notice this large panel field of the new landscaping? I'm also not comfortable with the lighting, the waiver for the lighting. I'm not comfortable not knowing there couldn't be some type of buffer. If there are conditions that need to be met for trees, whether they can or can't be put there, there's got to be some type of measurement to block the sight of this. And I know that we have some, testimony from your expert. I've walked that area. I know that area. What's there is overgrown. It's not the permanent landscape look we'd want there, but we're, governed by certain bodies of planting, and so are you. And I haven't heard from our expert, Mr. Brignell, of what you'll be putting money into the tree fund for trees you can't plant. But I mean, we've been working on the boat docks to try to do something for decades. And we do have that under study right now to be looked at. And I have no promise from you or true factual understanding of whether this can be seen from a boat ride or not, and if it's going to be the new landscape design of what you choose to have there. And last, what other environmental benefits for the township of Edison, the residents, aside from having, I guess, aggregated electric? Is the town getting some type of least benefit? I guess there'll be a new tax base there as well. Could you walk through all of that in a nutshell and the benefits?
This will be taxable. It will be assessed by your assessor, and it's a change in use, so it triggers that. And there will be new taxes levied as a consequence of this development on that property. I want to point out that this use is permitted on this site by statute. So we really aren't talking about whether this use can be there. It can. This isn't a use variance application.
But you're also asking for variances to maximize what you want to put there. And
We're actually not asking for any variances at all. We're asking for We're asking for
I'm sorry, waivers.
waivers, yes. We're asking for one waiver to allow us to place some pieces, small pieces of our array in a buffer to the floodplain. That buffer area is a part of the existing disturbed landfill cap. It is no more visible than any other part of this site in accord with the testimony of our expert. So that there is no relationship between that request and any visual impacts. We're asking for a waiver from landscaping also because of the landfill cap. We cannot dig holes in the landfill cap. It is of paramount importance, both as highlighted in the letters of your professionals and in the DEP's world, as well as our insurers, that we not penetrate the landfill cap. The only way to install landscaping of any significance is to dig holes, to penetrate the land. We don't want to do that. We cannot do that. So yes, it's a waiver of providing landscaping, but it's not one that any of us really has a choice about. It would be much easier for us if we could say, yes, we'll put a line of shrubbery around our fence, but we cannot do that, even if we wish to. And what was the third waiver?
Lighting.
Oh, lighting, yeah, lighting. We do not wish to illuminate this site at night. And from a visual perspective, I would think that would only be advantageous to the public on the river, not to have the glow of lights coming off of our site. We don't think that we need it. The site is serviced during the daytime when the solar panels are operational so that the technicians are able to discern whether or not they're functioning correctly. They don't go there at night. We don't feel that we need them for security. And so the reason for lighting is to provide for the safety of people who are on the site, as one would have in a parking lot or something like that. We don't have those considerations, so we're asking for that. Those are our waivers, sir.
And how are you addressing the, even though that you have good testimony of why you can't do planting, to Mr. Bignell, what are they going to do for the landscaping? Are they committed to the tree fund, or are they just, because they can't plant, they just get exempt from it?
Well, if the board don't want to exempt them, that's fine, but like I explained to you already, there's criteria. First off, if they're creating more than 1,000 square feet of impervious cover, it's 1 tree per 1,000. There's no impervious cover. Number two, it's if they create a parking lot, it's 1 tree every 50 linear feet of parking area. There's no parking area. Part three, if you cut down a tree, you have to replace with a certain number, a percentage of 4 to 16 inches, and then 18 inches, and then 21. There's no trees being cut down, so there's no tree replacement. The only thing you could possibly do is you want to put some trees along Meadow Road. It's a couple hundred feet, maybe, I don't know, 200, 300 feet, that'd be like 6 trees. So if you want to make them pay into the tree fund, you could certainly do that. You know, or you can make them plant the trees there too, along that road. I don't know what good that does, but because you won't be able to see that from the path either, because it's on the other side of it'll be on the other side of the solar panels. But that would be the only portion of the ordinance that could apply here would possibly be every 50 feet along the right of way. And I'm not even sure it's a public right of way. I know it's a road in there. It might be just their private road. I have to check that first. Maybe the counselor can help us. Is Meadow Road along your landfill, is that a public right of way, or?
It is shown as a street on your tax maps,
Okay.
but it is blocked off. And I think it's blocked off because it's a Superfund site and we really don't want the public traipsing around in there.
So theoretically, then you could be responsible for the trees along that right of way every 50 linear feet. And maybe the engineer can tell you how long it is, and then that would be the number.
They're not going to let you put trees down.
Yeah, we can't install the trees.
But you can pay into the fund like Mr. Coyle, Councilman Coyle is suggesting.
And if that's a requirement of the board, we will do so.
And if you go to linear feet, I know the engineer has a plan. Maybe you can look it up real quick. How many feet is that?
It's about 500 linear feet of road frontage.
You're looking at 10 trees. So the fee of 10 trees into the tree fund.
That's an acceptable condition if that's what the board imposes.
The other part I have is just us granting the waiver for the lights, knowing that today the lights may not be the issue, but tomorrow it could be a different answer. I'm just not comfortable with. I just look at this. It's still a business. Whether you're laying down carpet, that's a new building, or it's just because you're not digging a hole and putting up a structure. It's still a structure. Although these solar panels today are more, innovative, that you just put weights on them and you lay them down in the field, you're still disturbing land at some level. You're changing the area of the way it looked prior to this, and it is going to be the new landscaping. And you haven't provided me whether it is or it isn't, and no one's taken a boat ride to determine that. So I just don't see. I'm not comfortable with giving you the waiver for the lights, and I just share that with the board. If the board has a different answer, I can't argue that, but the option of having the lights and us making that determination to have them on or off, I'd rather have that in our pocket for the residents of Edison than to make that determination on whether or not you think it's appealing. No different than I don't have any factual statements that it's appealing. Whether I can come down the river and see this new landscape design of panels, that's a business. I mean, I don't think these experts are coming here because it's just a great idea. This is an opportunity to develop energy. It's a business model. Just because you get away with laying them down and that you waive a lot of rights, I still think you have an inherent responsibility, for the environment, and you're changing the look of that river. So
I'm sorry, Councilman Coyle, I don't understand the connection between our request for a lighting waiver and your concerns about the aesthetic appeals of the site. Could you please?
What I'm saying is that I'd rather this board not grant you the waiver of the lighting and install the lighting, and the Township of Edison will make the determination on whether you turn the lights on or off.
I need to address that, because typically the reason there are lighting ordinances in any town is typically for safety. You say that, yes, it's a business. The reason business is my business itself that I'm sitting in right now, we have lights in our parking lot because the lights in the parking lot are for the safety of employees or visitors coming in when it's dark. There are no visitors to this site at dark, as I testified. It's not open to the public. So the safety issue is gone. And there's no other reason to have any business lit up at night except for safety and security. And we already testified that the security is not an issue, nor is it safety. I light my business at night, so I don't want, if someone's coming here in the winter, I don't want them to fall or hurt themselves. But if my business is not going to have anyone near it, or say I'm a storage yard and I don't need it for security, the lighting's not necessary. And the town is typically not the arbiter of whether lights go on and off for aesthetics. And to function with the aesthetic argument, having no lights in my mind is a better alternative than to having lights lighting up a facility that you don't want to see in the first place.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Mr. Pippola.
Also, I would put up for consideration, Mr. Coyle, is that if you light that up, I think you'll make it an attractive nuisance.
Agreed.
It'd be very difficult, I think, you're just asking for trouble if you light that up. Would be my opinion.
I won't disagree.
I agree with that opinion.
I don't disagree. This is mindful of your thoughts. It's just that what you probably haven't looked in is to all the crime reports we have down at that landfill, and that area of that boat ramp of all the vandalism. So if you're saying it's not a requirement and you don't believe there's any safety issues, and you don't believe that anybody from the walkway can cross over and get involved in vandalism and or hurt themselves, and we don't have any access to see if anybody's even back there, that's your opinion. But in my opinion, we have a lot of problems down there in crime as it is. So if you're gaining a benefit at the moment, I think we should make the determination later whether we want the lights on or not, because at this time we have a lot of crime down there. And I can show you several incident reports down there. It's constant. And that's why Mrs. Zendelsky mentioned about having cameras down there. He's well aware of it too. I just don't see how you couldn't install your lighting just to be an inherent benefit that we all can choose the option later.
Councilman, the part of your position that I don't understand is, how does government control when lights are lit on private property?
Yes.
Well, he's asking for a waiver. I'm asking not to grant the waiver. That was.
I know, but you're
that was the request.
suggesting that you want him to install lights and then have the council decide when they're turned on, or if they're turned on, and if so, when. And I don't understand how the council could gain control over, when lights are illuminated on private property.
That was, my point was not to control what they're doing. My point was that they're asking for the waiver because they don't think it's a benefit. I'm believing there is a benefit, and I wouldn't want to grant the waiver. I'll just settle on that.
Who benefits from the lights?
It's a requirement, and they're asking for a waiver.
Right, but who benefits from the lights?
So I'm just mentioning I don't want to give them the waiver. Is that a problem that I disagree with the waiver?
You can take that position. I'm just trying to understand your position, so if the board were to vote require lights, I can explain it in a resolution.
I think it's an unsafe area, and it does invite issues that are undetermined at this time, and this board's not aware of. And this board is not aware of all the crime, but I can assure you there's plenty of crime down there. If it's that big of a lift for them to put lights in.
I would also just like to add that there may be some issues with the EPA and the DEP with installing lights in the Superfund site, and that may not be allowed. Something that they would support. I think that also illuminating it, if it's somehow censored or keeping it on, that may make it easier for people to see what they're doing and to roam around and to attract them. So.
And Mr. Rosati, would we be able to install light poles as a practical matter without being able to do ground penetrations?
I mean, we would have to ballast that as well, but it's a much more difficult situation due to the point load on it. But I would also add that any lighting we would add that would be compliant with the ordinance would not have any spillover effect to the area that we're talking about of the boat basin, which is several hundred feet away. It would merely light up an area in the middle of an inactive landfill that's already gated and access shielded by a proposed fence and existing heavy landscape or heavy vegetation along the river itself.
Madam Chair, I'm not going to debate it further. I'm just not supporting the waiver for lighting for several reasons, and that's just where my position. I'm not going to hold the board up, and I thank you for your time.
Anyone else? Any other comments? Okay, I think then at this point, do we have anyone on Zoom that has their hand raised? I would open the public portion.
Being nobody here, I say we make a motion to close the public portion.
Is there anyone?
No. Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to grant approval of this application, including the requested waivers for the 50-foot buffer floodplain area, the landscape plan. However, we will require a contribution to the tree fund for replacement of trees.
Is it 10 trees or?
No, for street trees, 10 street trees.
It's 10 streets, okay.
Also, include the waiver for site lighting. With the following conditions, first and foremost, that the applicant agrees to all the comments and recommendations made by our consultants, Mr. Bignell and Mr. Harley's memos, most recent memos. And finally, adding that the proviso that no changes can be made to these conditions of approval without returning to this board to seek our approval of any such changes.
Okay, do I have a second? Okay, Lillian? Yes to approve?
Yes.
Brett?
Yes, to approve.
Member Coyle?
No.
Kelsey?
Yes on the motion.
This application is approved.
Thank you all very much.
Wait. You forgot.
Yes.
Now the application is approved.
Thank you all very much. Appreciate your professionals' input and the courtesies that your staff has afforded us in the course of developing this application.
Thank you for your patience too, Dave. All of you.
Thank you for your time.
Good night.
All right, we have one
Right.
more item on our agenda.
Well, we have to move the other items, the redevelopment items on our agenda. We have to move those or adjourn those.
Okay. You know, I don't want to do the extension of time, but he says I have to move the other ones first.
Yeah, because they're before it on the agenda, so let's just adjourn the redevelopment studies.
October?
Okay. So is someone
September?
wanna make a motion to adjourn
Are we
the-
adjourning, excuse me, September or October? I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
September 14th.
Okay. Great, thank you.
Now we're just going to do the extension of time. Mike.
Correct.
Okay, so we didn't need a motion for that? Okay. Okay, so now we are on to item 8 on our agenda, extension of time for P 5162 Thomas Shea, 1 year for Woodland Avenue.
Yeah, the board granted an extension of time on December 16th, 2019 for 1 year, and the applicant is requesting another extension of time due to an ability to obtain the necessary permits as a result of COVID and other issues that have arisen. It's a 17-acre tract on the east side of Woodland Avenue. Across the street is South Plainfield. And he needs to get sanitary sewer approval from 2 municipalities and 2 regional authorities and DEP. So you can get up to 3 approvals.
I was going to just ask, you can get up to 3 one-year approvals?
Correct.
Okay.
Now, the complicating factor in all this, not complicating, but raises the issue of whether it's necessary, is that a month or 2 ago, the governor signed after legislative enactment, Permanent Extension Act, which basically froze all time periods related to governmental approvals, including municipal land use approvals. Whether or not he really needs this at this time or not is an academic question, but it can't hurt him. It may result, depending on how long this Permanent Extension Act lasts, which is supposed to last until the pandemic is over. It may be that it gets an extra 6 months or more, depending on how long this Permanent Extension Act remains in effect.
Okay. I think we had, John Soltez wanted to make a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the extension of time.
Second.
Okay, all in favor or individual vote, Lillian?
Vote.
Vote. Yes for the extension of time?
Yes.
Yes for extension.
Yes.
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 The extension of time is approved for 1 year.
Okay, anything else? Any comments? Anyone else raising their hand on Zoom? Okay, if nothing else, I will adjourn this meeting.
Motion to adjourn.
Do I have a motion to adjourn? I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
This meeting is adjourned.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Aye.
Irene.
Good night, everyone.